Chapter 512. The Sword God Gorge was very long, but not all places were suitable for comprehending the sword will. The sword will at the end of the Sword God Gorge was too weak, and the sword will at the front was too strong. The sword will at the front was too strong, and it could easily backfire. The sword will at the middle section was neither strong nor weak, and it was suitable for some ordinary swordsman to comprehend the sword will. Now, Leo Baron was going to take Qin Chuan to the middle section. Most people would comprehend the sword will at the middle section of the Sword God Gorge, but those who are really talented in swordsmanship would choose the middle section. Leo Baron walked forward and said to Qin Chuan, "Last time, I didn't take you to the middle section because you just came in contact with a Milky Way sword will. It's too dangerous to take you there. Now that you have honed your sword heart, you can go to the middle section. There should be fewer people there." Qin Chuan heard this and asked curiously, "Has anyone been to the front section of the Sword God Gorge?" "Of course, but those people are either top elites like me, or they're already dead." Leo Baron sneered. "Not everyone is qualified to come here. After all, the person who slashed this sword was Su Inha. Even I wouldn't go to the front section of the Sword God Gorge unless it was necessary. I have to admit, I am far worse than Su Inha." Hearing Leo Baron's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but have a complicated look on his face. Su Inha was so strong that she was almost invincible in both the human and demon realms, but she still died at the hands of Zerg. This showed how strong Zerg was. If he couldn't raise his strength to a higher level before the insectoids descended again, his fate wouldn't be any better than an ordinary person's. Because of these worries, when Leo Baron asked him to participate in the challenge, he didn't hesitate to agree. When Leo Baron asked him to comprehend the Milky Way sword will, he didn't hesitate. For him, any opportunity to improve his strength was not to be missed. As Lion Baron said, there were not many people in the middle of Sword God Canyon. Qin Chuan only saw 4 people, 3 men and 1 woman. The 4 of them did not care about Qin Chuan and Lion Baron's arrival. They were focused on learning the galaxy sword mind in Sword God Gorge. They looked like real swordsmen, and they were not like the people they had encountered before. They were just lucky. Qin Chuan closed his eyes and carefully felt the pressure of the sword intent in the middle section of the Sword God Gorge. That majestic and mighty aura made him want to prostrate himself in worship. It took him a lot of effort to restrain the urge to kneel down. "Don't be too close to the front, just here." Lion Baron pointed to a stone not far away and said to Qin Chuan, "Just sit there and take your time." Qin Chuan nodded, walked to the stone, sat down, and began to comprehend the Milky Way sword will. Just as Qin Chuan was about to enter a meditative state, the rune sword that had been quietly staying in his brain suddenly trembled slightly. Perceiving the change in the rune sword, Qin Chuan couldn't help but feel a little worried. He didn't know what the rune sword was going to do this time. The last few times the rune sword moved, nothing good had happened. As if it had sensed Qin Chuan's thoughts, the rune sword made a dissatisfied, buzzing sound. Then, it gently waved in Qin Chuan's brain. Qin Chuan felt as if his brain had been cut open by the sword, and a trace of connection was formed with the Sword God Gorge in front of him. Buzz! The quiet Sword God Gorge suddenly emitted a sword cry, and a terrifying sword intent soared into the sky. The sky changed color, and in the blink of an eye, the clear sky turned into a sky full of stars. Qin Chuan looked at the change in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. He didn't expect that a casual wave of the rune sword would produce such a shocking phenomenon. At this moment, not only was Qin Chuan stupefied, everyone in the vicinity of the Sword God Gorge had expressions of shock. Those with slightly weaker cultivations had already prostrated themselves on the ground, spitting out blood as their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Even Lion Baron's face became extremely dignified. Strange, this has never happened in the Sword God Gorge for thousands of years. Lion Baron looked at the changes in the sky and carefully felt the pressure of the sword intent in the Sword God Gorge. He said to Qin Chuan, who was standing at the side, "Can you still hold on?" Qin Chuan subconsciously replied, "I'm fine." Qin Chuan was indeed fine, because the pressure produced by the explosion of the Milky Way sword intent was completely blocked by the rune sword. Although Qin Chuan didn't know what was going on in front of him, he knew very well that all these changes were caused by the rune sword. If he wanted to stop this change, he had to let the rune sword take action. "Brother, stop messing around. Can you stop it quickly?" Qin Chuan said to the rune sword in his heart with a headache. "Why are you doing this all of a sudden?" In the face of Qin Chuan's dissatisfaction, the rune sword also made a dissatisfied buzzing sound. Then it didn't stop all this. Instead, it waved again. This time, the sword intent in the sword god Gorge burst out crazily, dyeing the whole world with a silver-white color. The sword intent was overwhelming, surging like a flood. Everyone was scared and hurriedly retreated. Lion Baron had already taken action to pull Qin Chuan away from the sword god Gorge. However, the sword intent seemed to have a spirit. When it sensed that Qin Chuan was about to retreat, it suddenly condensed together and turned into a silver-white long sword, rushing straight at Qin Chuan. Seeing this scene, Lion Baron's expression changed drastically. He wanted to help Qin Chuan block the amazing sword intent that was rushing straight at him. However, the sword intent was extremely agile and avoided Lion Baron's obstruction. With a whoosh, it flew into Qin Chuan's head and disappeared. Lion Baron was shocked when he saw this. He quickly asked Qin Chuan, "Qin Chuan, are you okay?" At this time, Qin Chuan had already fainted under the impact of the sword intent. He couldn't answer Lion Baron's question. Lion Baron saw this and quickly checked Qin Chuan's physical condition. He was surprised to find that Qin Chuan's body was very good. There was no problem, and the sword intent that rushed into Qin Chuan's body had strangely disappeared. This is really strange. Lion Baron found that he couldn't understand Qin Chuan. It was the first time he had seen someone who didn't die after being hit by such a terrifying sword intent. After waking up this time, Qin Chuan would definitely get a great opportunity. Thinking of this, Lion Baron found himself a little envious of Qin Chuan's luck. Following this kid, I don't know how many benefits he will get. Just thinking about it makes me envious. God is so unfair. Lion Baron sighed and looked back at the sword god Gorge, where the sword intent had become extremely weak. He then looked at the unconscious Qin Chuan in his arms and decided to take Qin Chuan back to the mountain city first. Everything would wait until Qin Chuan woke up. Chapter 513. In less than an hour, the news of the sword god Gorge's sword intent rioting, the stars in the sky shining with silver light, and the dissipation of the sword intent spread throughout the entire mountain. Just when everyone was surprised and puzzled by the change in the sword god Gorge, Lion Baron had quietly brought the unconscious Qin Chuan back to the hotel in the mountain city. He put Qin Chuan on the bed and checked Qin Chuan's body. After making sure that Qin Chuan was fine, he sat down and patiently waited for Qin Chuan to wake up. However, what Lion Baron did not know was that Qin Chuan's mind was actually clear at this time. The reason why he did not move, as if he had fainted, was because of the confrontation between the rune sword and the silver river sword intent. In Qin Chuan's mind, the rune sword surrounded by green smoke and the silver river sword intent that emitted silver-white starlight were confronting each other like needles. They were not giving way to each other, and the one sandwiched between them was Qin Chuan's spiritual body in his mind. At this time, Qin Chuan did not dare to move. He was afraid that his movements would cause a misunderstanding between the rune sword and the silver river sword intent. If these two guys really fought, his spiritual body would definitely be torn to pieces. I say, brothers, do you think there's some kind of misunderstanding here? Qin Chuan glanced at the rune sword on the left and the silver river sword intent on the right. His heart was completely broken. If God gave him another chance to choose, he would never go to the sword god Gorge today. Comprehending the sword intent was not as important as his life. However, in the face of Qin Chuan's persuasion, both the rune sword and the silver river sword intent were indifferent. Obviously, they did not listen to Qin Chuan's words at all. This feeling of being in a dilemma made Qin Chuan break down a little. If the rune sword and the silver river sword intent continued to confront each other like this, the person who would lose the most would definitely be him. He had to find a way to change the situation in front of him. After thinking about it, Qin Chuan decided to take the risk and persuade the runic sword. After all, he was more familiar with the runic sword. Brother Rune Sword, we've known each other for so many years. You don't want me to die, do you? Can't you take a step back? Qin Chuan said to the rune sword in a negotiating tone. Don't lower yourself to its level. It's just an outsider. I'll get rid of it sooner or later. When that time comes, you'll still be in charge here. As soon as Qin Chuan finished speaking, the rune sword did not say anything. However, the Milky Way sword intent buzzed unhappily, as if expressing its anger at being chased away. Qin Chuan turned his head and glanced at the Milky Way sword intent with a helpless expression. He whispered, I was just saying that casually. I wanted to fool it first. I didn't really want to chase you away. Before he finished speaking, the rune sword had already pressed the tip of its sword against Qin Chuan's waist, as if it was going to stab him. If the rune sword could speak, it would definitely be cursing Qin Chuan at this time. Scumbag Ba. Qin Chuan saw that the rune sword was unhappy again. He really had a headache. He did not know how to persuade the two of them to let go of their dispute first. He could only stand there with a bitter face. However, Qin Chuan had calmed down, but the rune sword and the Milky Way sword intent became restless. The Milky Way sword intent was eager to split off a strand of sword intent to bypass Qin Chuan and go straight for the rune sword. However, the sword intent was blocked by the green smoke just as it approached the rune sword and disappeared in a thin air. Buzz. The Milky Way sword intent suddenly made a buzzing sound. It actually turned around and wanted to leave Qin Chuan's brain. However, the rune sword would not give the Milky Way sword intent the chance. It immediately split off a strand of green smoke to entangle the Milky Way sword intent. The Milky Way sword intent could not dodge in time and was entangled by the green smoke. It suddenly stopped in place and did not dare to move in the slightest. Qin Chuan saw this scene and could not help but show a touch of surprise on his face. The green smoke around the rune sword actually subdued the Milky Way sword intent so easily. Didn't this mean that the green smoke around the rune sword was stronger than the Milky Way sword intent? Brother, you are good. Qin Chuan looked at the rune sword with excitement. After all this time, you were pretending to be weak to eat the tiger. When the rune sword heard Qin Chuan's words, it immediately made a triumphant buzzing sound. It was as if it was saying that if it had not pretended to be weak to eat the tiger, the Milky Way sword intent would not have been so easily fooled and entered the brain. Qin Chuan still wanted to say something to the rune sword, but the rune sword took the Milky Way sword intent, which no longer dared to move, and left. It had no intention of continuing to chat with him. When Qin Chuan saw this, he was about to open his mouth and call out to the rune sword. Suddenly, the rune sword threw out a sword light and drove his consciousness out of the brain. In the hotel, Qin Chuan, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. There was a very strange look on his face. He was driven away by the rune sword. After all, that was his brain. You are awake? Leo Baron saw that Qin Chuan had woken up and sat down. It seems that you're looking good. Qin Chuan sat up, looked at Leo Baron, and asked, How long have I been unconscious? Not long, just half a day. Leo Baron looked at Qin Chuan curiously and asked, Where did the Milky Way sword intent go? Hearing Leo Baron's words, Qin Chuan grinned, pointed to his head, and said, Here. Leo Baron saw the Milky Way sword intent rush into his body with his own eyes. There was no need for him to hide this matter from Leo Baron. Leo Baron's face couldn't help but show a look of understanding. He said to Qin Chuan with some envy, Ever since I became a shifter king, I have not felt this kind of envy for a long time. Ever since I met you, I have really become more and more envious of you. Your luck is simply too good to be true. Whether it was the Milky Way sword intent or the treasures obtained in the carefree secret realm, ordinary people would burn incense if they could get one of these. However, Qin Chuan had obtained all of them. Qin Chuan laughed and said to Leo Baron, I am just lucky. You are indeed lucky. Leo Baron looked at Qin Chuan with subtle eyes and said, When a Milky Way sword intent flew towards you, I only cared about protecting you. I didn't notice if anyone else saw this scene. If this matter is known by others, then you have to be careful, especially of deity Sword Villa. Qin Xuan frowned slightly when he heard this. This sword god canyon has been formed for thousands of years. This Milky Way sword intent is also an item without an owner. Is deity Sword Villa going to forcibly take the Milky Way sword intent from my brain? In short, you have to be careful. If deity Sword Villa really wants to trouble you, because of this, things will not be easy to deal with. If it was an ordinary force, Leo Baron could still scare them off by showing some of his skills. However, deity Sword Villa also had nascent soul cultivators, and this matter was related to the Milky Way sword intent. Even if he stepped in, he might not be able to make deity Sword Villa give up. Maybe Qin Xuan's first time asking him to help would be used here. Chapter 514. While Qin Xuan and Lion Duke were talking about deity Sword Villa, Su Kuang and Su Miao, who were on their way to World Mountain, also received the news from World Mountain. They knew about the Sword Essence riot in Sword God Gorge. Sword Essence riot in Sword God Gorge. Su Kuang looked at Su Miao with astonishment. What the hell is going on? Su Miao shook her head and said, I don't know the specific situation. Most of the people at the scene only saw the vision in the sky. As for how this vision appeared, no one knows. But, seeing Su Miao, hesitating, Su Kuang seemed to think of something. He frowned and asked, Does it have something to do with Qin Xuan? Su Miao nodded and said, According to the people at the scene, there was nothing unusual in Sword God Gorge at first. Not long after Qin Xuan arrived, the current vision appeared. And after the vision disappeared, the Sword God Gorge's Milky Way sword essence weakened to the extreme. It was difficult to feel the Milky Way sword essence, even at the beginning. Su Kuang was completely stunned this time. The Milky Way sword essence in Sword God Gorge had disappeared. However, if this matter had something to do with Qin Xuan, it was too ridiculous. Seeing the expression on Su Kuang's face, Su Miao said with a complicated expression, When I first heard the news, I was also very shocked. I didn't believe it had something to do with Qin Xuan. But think about it. Sword God Gorge has been fine for thousands of years. But Qin Xuan just went to Sword God Gorge for a few days, and then something happened. Do you believe it has nothing to do with Qin Xuan? Su Kuang opened his mouth, but he couldn't say that he didn't believe her. Because the truth was just as Su Miao said, the Sword God Gorge did indeed have problems after Qin Xuan went there. The root of the problem was very likely to be Qin Xuan. Seeing is believing. Su Kuang took a deep breath and said to Su Miao, When we go to World Mountain and see Qin Xuan, everything will be explained. Su Miao looked at Su Kuang and asked, Do you really believe that Qin Xuan will tell you everything? He might not want you to know the truth. I have never thought about making Qin Xuan trust me unconditionally and not hide anything from me. I don't have such a high position in Qin Xuan's heart. I just want to confirm whether he has really comprehended the Milky Way sword essence. Su Kuang took a deep look at Su Miao. It took me more than 10 years to do it. I find it hard to believe that someone else could do it in just a few days. Su Miao couldn't help but fall silent when she heard this. Su Kuang had always been a genius in the sword Dao in the eyes of the world, and was known as the Little Sword Fairy. However, even Su Kuang, who was extremely talented in the sword Dao, took a full 10 years to comprehend the Silver River sword intent. If Qin Xuan only used a few days to do what Su Kuang took 10 years to do, then it would be a huge blow to Su Kuang. Hopefully, everything was just a rumor. Mountain Range, Mountain City. Zhong Chuyu frowned at Uncle Zhong and asked, The Milky Way sword essence in the Sword God Gorge disappeared? Is it said that it has something to do with Qin Xuan? Uncle Zhong nodded and replied, It said that not long after Qin Xuan came to the Sword God Gorge, there was an anomaly in the gorge, and then it disappeared. Everyone guessed that it had something to do with Qin Xuan's arrival. After the anomaly disappeared, Qin Xuan also disappeared, which confirmed everyone's speculation. Nonsense. Zhong Chuyu snorted. The Milky Way sword essence in the Sword God Gorge has existed for thousands of years, and there has never been any problem. Qin Chuan is just a foundation-building cultivator. How could he steal the Milky Way sword essence in the Sword God Gorge? Besides, after the anomaly disappeared, was Qin Chuan the only one who disappeared at the Sword God Gorge? Uncle Zhong replied, there were hundreds of people who disappeared at that time, not only Qin Chuan. That's it, Zhong Qiyu said coldly. Someone must be adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes, wanting to push Qin Chuan into the teeth of the storm and become the target of public criticism. When Uncle Zhong heard Zhong Qiyu's words, he didn't know how to respond. In his opinion, Zhong Qiyu was too partial to Qin Chuan and always felt that everyone was framing Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan was as pure as ice and as pure as jade. In fact, few people who could enter the cultivation world and get to where they were today were simple. Unfortunately, Zhong Qiyu couldn't think of this, or she thought of it but was unwilling to face it. In short, whether Qin Chuan was good or bad, Zhong Qiyu would stand on Qin Chuan's side. Of course, Uncle Zhong wouldn't say anything bad about Qin Chuan. He would only proceed from Zhong Qiyu's point of view and defend Qin Chuan. Butler, send someone to investigate and see who is spreading the rumors behind the scenes. Also, go to the hotel and see if Qin Chuan has returned. If he has, send someone to protect him secretly. Anyone who dares to plot against Qin Chuan will be killed without mercy. Zhong Qiyu said with a murderous look, I'd like to see who in this mountain city dares to go against my Zhong family. In the hotel, Qin Chuan sat on a chair on the balcony, his gaze leisurely looking at the artificial sun in the sky. He looked at the sky background created by the simulator, but his mind was not on this strange scenery. Just now, he received an email from Su Kuang. Su Kuang would arrive in the mountain city in 2 days and wanted to meet with him. If Su Kuang was only representing himself, Qin Chuan would be very happy to meet with his old friend. However, Su Kuang wrote in the email that he was only representing the deity, Swordvilla. This meant that this meeting wasn't just to catch up, but to discuss matters related to benefits. If possible, Qin Chuan would rather talk to other people in the deity Swordvilla because he didn't want to mix too many benefits with his friendship with Su Kuang. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about these things, the doorbell suddenly rang outside the hotel. Qin Chuan turned around and glanced at the surveillance video. He couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. Qin Hu? Why is he here? Looking at Qin Hu standing outside the door, Qin Chuan couldn't help but reveal a thoughtful expression. When the doorbell rang again, he stood up and slowly walked into the living room. Open the door. After Qin Chuan gave the order, the door automatically opened. Qin Hu, who was standing at the door, walked in. When he saw Qin Chuan standing in the living room, he immediately said with a respectful expression, "Eighth young master." Hearing Qin Hu's address, Qin Chuan waved his hand and said, "Don't try to act like we're close. You know better than me whether I'm the 8th young master or not. Since you were able to find me, you must have put in a lot of effort. If you have something to say, just say it." Hearing this, Qin Hu suddenly knelt in front of Qin Chuan on one knee and said in an extremely sincere tone, "This old servant earnestly requests the 8th young master to return to the family and inherit the family's power." Chapter 5:15. Qin Chuan looked at the kneeling Qin Hu and chuckled. "Stop fooling around. You know that I won't agree to it." Putting aside the fact that Qin Hu was kneeling down right now, even if Qin Hu threatened him with his life, he would definitely not return to the Qin clan. Right now, the Qin clan was just a quagmire in his eyes. The only consequence of returning was to sink deeper and deeper into the quagmire until he was completely submerged. Qin Hu had expected Qin Chuan's rejection and wasn't surprised. He only begged Qin Chuan again, "8th young master, please return to the family. The family was wrong in the past, but we won't do the same again. You're so annoying." Qin Chuan looked at Qin Hu impatiently. "We're all adults. Can you stop playing this game?" Qin Chuan was really annoyed. If he had known that Qin Hu would come looking for him to do something like this, he wouldn't have opened the door. Faced with Qin Chuan's rejection again, Qin Hu raised his head and sincerely said to Qin Chuan, "8th young master, the family knows that we were wrong. Please give the family and you a chance. As long as you're willing to return to the family, not only will the family do our best to nurture you, but we'll also give the position of family head to." Without waiting for Qin Hu to finish, Qin Chuan interrupted him without hesitation. He looked at Qin Hu and said seriously, "If you're here for this and have no other business, please leave. You're not welcome here." Eighth young master. Qin Hu's tears flowed down his face. He choked as he said, "Don't you want second miss to return to the family?" When Qin Chuan heard this, his gaze turned sharp as he stared at Qin Hu. He coldly said, "Are you threatening me?" Eighth young master. This old servant is only stating a fact. Qin Hu looked at Qin Chuan. Back then, second miss was expelled from the family. Even now, her memorial tablet can't be placed in the ancestral hall. Don't you want second miss memorial tablet to return to the family? If second miss is in heaven, she would definitely hope that you can return to the family. Just as Qin Chuan was about to yell at Qin Hu's body suddenly disappeared in front of Qin Chuan. He was replaced by Lion Baron. Seeing Lion King appear, Qin Chuan swallowed the words he was about to say. Lion King looked annoyed, and he said, "If you don't want to talk to him, then just throw him out. He's disturbing my nap. It's so annoying." Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said, "Thank you. No need to thank me." Lion Duke waved his hand casually and said, "I can see that you are tempted. You want your mother's tablet to return to the Qin clan, right?" Qin Chuan was silent for a moment, and then he said to Lion Duke, "I don't know what I'm thinking, but perhaps returning to my family was one of my mother's last wishes. If your mother had such a wish, she wouldn't have left the Qin clan in the first place." Lion Duke looked at Qin Chuan. "If you are soft-hearted now, if you return to your family because of your mother's memorial tablet, the only person you can touch is yourself. Do you understand?" Lion Duke's words made Qin Chuan go silent. It made him wake up. It was just as Lion Duke said. If his mother was reluctant to leave her family, then she wouldn't have chosen to be with his father. In the end, Qin Hu's words were just to deceive him. "Thank you." Qin Chuan thanked Lion Duke again, but Lion Duke had already returned to his room to sleep. He had made himself very clear, and if Qin Chuan was still stubborn, there was nothing he could do. Qin Hu stood outside the door of the hotel, his face full of fear. When Lion Duke appeared, he felt a sense of danger, but before he could make any preparations, he had already appeared outside the hotel. If that person wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have any chance to resist. With his late Gold Core realm, he wouldn't feel so powerless even if he faced a peak Gold Core realm cultivator. Only a nascent soul realm cultivator could suppress him without any resistance. In other words, there was a nascent soul realm cultivator by Qin Chuan's side. After thinking about this, Qin Hu's face couldn't help but turn serious. A nascent soul realm cultivator who could appear by Qin Chuan's side was most likely that person from the Black Moon Combat Academy. Just as the entire World Mountain was in an uproar because of the changes in the Sword God Gorge, Su Kuang and the others from the Deity Sword Villa, who had set off from Star Dragon City, finally arrived at the mountain city. Before this, Su Kuang had never been to Border Mountain and had never been to a city in the middle of the mountain. When he saw the city in the middle of the mountain, he let out a gasp of surprise like Qin Chuan when he first saw the city in the middle of the mountain. In the current era of technology in the universe, it was rare to see a mountain completely empty to build a city. No wonder it's called a mountain city. It really lives up to its name. Su Kuang sighed and said to Su Miao, "If I knew there was such a majestic city in the World Mountain, I would have come to see it sooner. It's not too late now." Su Miao smiled and said to Su Kuang, "Senior brother, let's go in." Su Kuang nodded and walked toward the mountain city. When they were lining up to enter the city, Jianyu, who was following behind Su Kuang, asked Su Kuang in a low voice, "Su Kuang, should we stay in the hotel where Qin Chuan is staying?" Hearing Jianyu's words, Su Kuang couldn't help but reveal a subtle expression. His eyes moved slightly and said to Jianyu, "Yes." Su Miao asked curiously, "Shouldn't we walk around first and go directly to see Qin Chuan?" Su Kuang didn't respond to Su Miao. He turned to Jianyu and asked, "Since Deacon Jianyu arranged for us to stay in the hotel where Qin Chuan is staying, I guess this is what you mean, right?" Jianyu couldn't help but reveal an awkward smile and said in a low voice, "I'm just suggesting. I'll listen to your arrangement. That's it. There's no need to make any other arrangements." Su Kuang looked at Jianyu meaningfully. "After all, some people can't wait for me to meet Qin Chuan. If I refuse to go, won't some people be anxious?" Jianyu's face couldn't help but turn ugly when he heard Su Kuang's words. At this moment, Su Miao seemed to have realized something. She looked at Jianyu with a sharp gaze. Su Kuang gently grabbed Su Miao's hand and signaled her not to worry. He looked at Jianyu and said faintly, "I know that the decennial sword trial of the deity Sword Villa is coming soon. Some people are worried that I'll invite Qin Chuan as a guest, so they can't wait to see me and Qin Chuan have a conflict. Don't worry, I won't let them get what they want." Chapter 516. Mountain City Hotel. After Su Kuang and the others went through the check-in procedures, they had just returned to their rooms to put down their luggage when the doorbell rang. When Su Kuang saw that the person standing outside was Qin Chuan through the surveillance camera, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise on his face. On the other hand, Jianyu deliberately lowered his head as if he was trying to avoid Su Kuang and Su Miao's gaze. "Miao, open the door." Su Kuang turned around and walked to the tea table. He took out a jar of good tea leaves from his storage ring and prepared to make tea. After thinking for a while, he put away the tea leaves and took out a few bottles of fruit juice from Jia Mountain from the counter and placed them on the tea table. Su Miao opened the door and asked Qin Chuan, "How did you know we're here?" Qin Chuan chuckled and said, "I didn't know at first, but the waiter who came to our room to deliver food mentioned that there were 3 new guests from the deity Sword Villa staying in the hotel today. I guess that it might be you guys." While speaking, Qin Chuan had already entered the room. He greeted Su Kuang with a smile. "Why didn't you inform me in advance that you were coming?" Su Kuang smiled and replied, "We were going to treat you to dinner after we settled down. Look at us now. We're all a mess." Su Kuang picked up a bottle of fruit juice from the table and handed it to Qin Chuan. "I specially prepared it for you." "Forget it." Qin Chuan rolled his eyes. "This is prepared by the hotel. There's one in every room. I drink it every day." Although Qin Chuan complained, he still unscrewed the cap and took a sip of the juice. After that, he turned his gaze to Jianyu and asked, "Who is this?" Su Kuang glanced at Jianyu and said, "Introduce yourself." Jianyu immediately smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Hello, young Master Qin. I'm Jianyu, the deacon of deity Sword Villa." "Deacon Jianyu, it's nice to meet you." Qin Chuan politely greeted Jianyu, but he didn't seem to have any intention to chat. He turned his gaze to Su Kuang and asked, "Didn't you say you wanted to meet me earlier? You must have something to discuss with me, right?" "At first I did, but not now." Su Kuang sat down on the sofa and gestured for Qin Chuan to sit down as well. "I heard that you displayed the Milky Way sword intent in the arena. The stars in the sky were dazzling, and you killed your opponent in one strike. Everyone was saying that you comprehended the Milky Way sword intent. I didn't dare to believe it, so I wanted to see you with my own eyes. Just now when you entered the door, I could tell that you only honed your sword heart and didn't comprehend the Milky Way sword intent." Qin Chuan grinned and said, "I thought you wanted to see me for something. It turns out that you just want to see if I have comprehended the Milky Way sword essence. To tell you the truth, I just honed my sword heart, but I didn't comprehend the Milky Way sword essence." Su Miao, who was sitting next to Su Kuang, asked in confusion, "Since you didn't comprehend the Milky Way sword essence, how did you create the Milky Way sword essence?" Jianyu was also confused. It was the first time he heard that someone could use the Milky Way sword essence without comprehending it. It was completely unreasonable. Qin Chuan smiled and explained to everyone, "You can think of it as the Milky Way sword essence was a one-time use. I was honing my sword heart. I got a trace of the Milky Way sword essence in the Sword God Canyon by chance, and then I used it." Hearing Qin Chuan's explanation, everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that Qin Chuan's Milky Way sword essence came from this. Su Kuang took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said, "So, you went to the Sword God Canyon twice to see if you could get a trace of the Milky Way sword essence again?" Qin Chuan nodded and said frankly, I did go with this mentality, but unfortunately I didn't get a trace of the Milky Way sword essence in the Sword God Canyon riot. He didn't get a trace of the Milky Way sword essence because all of it had been kidnapped by the Rune sword. Everyone was thinking about how to ask Qin Chuan about the Sword God Canyon riot, but they didn't expect that Qin Chuan would take the initiative to ask. Su Miao glanced at Su Kuang and then asked Qin Chuan, Do you know why the Sword God Canyon riot? Qin Chuan said calmly, I know. Hearing Qin Chuan's reply, everyone's faces revealed a trace of surprise. However, they quickly became excited. Qin Chuan actually knew the reason for the Sword God Gorge's riot. Facing everyone's excited eyes, Qin Chuan chuckled. Haven't you heard? The reason for the Sword God Canyon riot is me. It's because I went to the Sword God Canyon that the riot happened. Now the whole world knows about this rumor, don't you know? Hearing Qin Chuan's words, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. They didn't know how to respond to Qin Chuan. The rumors outside can't be taken seriously. Su Kuang shook his head and said, Seeing is believing. If no one can prove that the Sword God Canyon riot is related to you, I won't believe those rumors. Cheers. Qin Chuan picked up the fruit juice and clinked it with Su Kuang's. He smiled and said, I don't care about these rumors. If they can really find the Milky Way sword intent on me, then I have to thank them. After all, I really like the pleasure of killing others with a single sword strike. Su Miao looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression and asked, Why did you come here all of a sudden? Qin Chuan had just come out of the carefree secret realm not long ago. It was really strange for him to come to the World Mountain to participate in this 1-against-1,000 challenge. I came here mainly to fight. I need to fight a lot. Qin Chuan smiled slightly. I got some opportunities in the carefree secret realm, and my realm improved a little too quickly. I want to hone myself through actual combat and strengthen my foundation. As for why I didn't stay in the Federation and came to the World Mountain, it's naturally to avoid some people with ulterior motives. To be honest, before meeting you, I just met with the Qin family's housekeeper, Qin Hu. He wanted me to return to the Qin family, but I refused. Hearing Qin Chuan mention the Qin family, Su Kuang raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, Qin Hu is also here? Qin Chuan nodded. Qin Hu is indeed in the mountain city. As for his specific location, I don't know. It seems that Qin Chuan can't hold on any longer. Otherwise, Qin Hu wouldn't have left Qin Yiming and appeared here. Su Kuang said thoughtfully, It seems that trouble is coming for the Qin family. Qin Chuan asked curiously, What's the situation with the Qin family now? Chapter 517. During the time he returned from the carefree secret realm, he had heard about the Qin family. Ever since he came to the World Mountain, he had no time to care about the Qin family. When he saw Qin Hu today, he didn't think too much about it. Now, after Su Kuang's reminder, he suddenly understood that Qin Hu had appeared to ask him to return to the Qin family, because trouble was coming for the Qin family. However, he didn't know what the trouble was. Hearing Qin Chuan's question, Su Kuang organized his words and replied, You still don't know, right? Because of the reappearance of Zerg in the carefree secret realm, the entire Federation is in chaos. Of course, this chaos refers to the higher-ups. The lives of ordinary people haven't changed much. The collusion between Qin Haoshuan and Zerg is already irrefutable evidence, so the Qin family can't refute it. Therefore, the higher-ups of the Federation have their eyes on the Qin family. The Qin family refuses to admit that they colluded with Zerg, but they can't produce evidence to prove their innocence. In desperation, the Qin family can only ask Qin Chongxiao to come out of seclusion. With Qin Chongxiao's identity as a nascent soul cultivator, the higher-ups of the Federation naturally don't dare to act recklessly. However, as long as the Qin family can't produce evidence to prove their innocence, the higher-ups of the Federation will keep an eye on them. Even Qin Chongxiao's face won't be useful in this regard. After all, Qin Chongxiao isn't the only nascent soul cultivator in our Federation. There are too many people who want something to happen to the Qin family. When Qin Chuan heard Su Kuang's words, he asked with some doubt, The Qin family still hasn't been cleared of suspicion? This matter concerns Zerg. It's not so easy to clear it. Su Kuang chuckled. The Qin family can't even protect themselves, and they almost implicated General Qin Ju. Fortunately, General Qin entered the military in his early years, and his relationship with the Qin family isn't close. Otherwise, Qin Ju might have been locked up. Hearing Su Kuang say that Qin Ju was fine, Qin Xuan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He said to Su Kuang, "No wonder Qin who came to me on behalf of Qin Yiming and told me that as long as I was willing to return to the Qin clan, he would agree to any conditions I had. So he wanted me to help them clear their suspicions." Su Kuang looked at Qin Xuan with a subtle expression and said, "If there's one person in the entire Federation who is not under suspicion, it's definitely you. Not only did you kill several soldiers of Zerg, you destroyed Zerg's plan, you also destroyed 2 teleportation channels, and you even cut off one of Zerg's Archon's legs. If you're Zerg's spy, then the price Zerg paid for you to gain our trust is too heavy." Hearing Su Kuang mention the Archon, Jian Yu subconsciously raised his eyes to look at Qin Xuan. His gaze was extremely subtle. Qin Xuan pondered for a moment and said to Su Kuang, "According to the Qin clan, if I'm willing to return to the Qin clan, I can clear their suspicions. How can they be so sure? I don't think the higher-ups of the Federation will trust me that much." Qin Xuan, you're thinking too little." Su Kuang laughed and said to Qin Xuan, "Think carefully. Whose student are you? And whose student is your teacher?" After receiving Su Kuang's reminder, Qin Xuan's face couldn't help but reveal a gloomy expression. He said coldly, "I thought the Qin clan was coming for me. I didn't expect them to be targeting my teacher and advisor." Su Kuang nodded and sighed. "Although your teacher, Ningya, is only at the Golden Core realm now, she will definitely advance to the nascent soul realm in the future. Moreover, she's an extremely rare level 4 battle formation master. Her strength alone is enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Even nascent soul realm cultivators have to give her some face. Ningya's teacher, Senior Ning Zhongtian, is even more amazing. As the old dean of the Black Moon Combat Academy, not only is he highly respected, but he's also a nascent soul realm cultivator. Roping you in is equivalent to roping in Ningya and old Dean Ning. If you were the higher-ups of the Federation, would you dare to act against the Qin clan so easily? If it was only Qin Chongxiao alone, even if he was a nascent soul realm cultivator, as long as the higher-ups of the Federation were ruthless enough to exterminate him, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, if Ningya and Ning Zhongtian were to join forces, it would be a different story. If 2 nascent soul realm cultivators and a level 4 battle formation master were to join forces, they would definitely be able to take away at least 2 nascent soul realm cultivators if they were to fight to the death. Such a loss was absolutely unacceptable to the Federation. It was precisely because of this that the Qin clan tried their best to rope in Qin Xuan. After figuring this out, Qin Xuan's expression couldn't help but become extremely unsightly. It was one thing for the Qin clan to scheme against him, but now they were even scheming against his teacher and advisor. This was something he couldn't tolerate. Seeing that Qin Xuan's expression had become extremely unsightly, Su Kuang comforted Qin Xuan. "There's no need to be angry. Because you didn't agree with the Qin clan, their plan didn't succeed. I just didn't expect that there would be such a sinister and cunning person in this world." Qin Xuan said hatefully, "If I had known earlier, I would have killed Qin Hu directly back then." Hearing Qin Xuan's angry words, no one took it to heart. After all, Qin Hu was a late-stage Golden Core realm cultivator. Qin Xuan and Qin Hu were an entire realm apart. It was basically impossible for Qin Xuan to kill Qin Hu. However, they didn't know that Qin Xuan wasn't thinking of doing it himself, but letting Lion Duke do it. With Lion Duke's realm, killing Qin Hu, who was a late-stage Golden Core realm cultivator, was easier than killing an ant. After calming down, Qin Xuan looked at Su Kuang with gratitude. "Thank you so much for today. If you hadn't reminded me, I wouldn't have thought that the Qin clan's intentions were so sinister." After what happened today, Qin Xuan hated the Qin clan to the extreme. "You don't have to thank me so much." Su Kuang chuckled. "To me, this is just moving my mouth. It's not difficult at all." All right, we've talked enough today. You guys must be tired from the long journey here. I won't disturb your rest. Qin Chuan stood up and said to Su Kuang, you guys have good rest. We'll have dinner together tonight. We'll talk then. All right. Su Kuang nodded and stood up. I'll send you off. Wait a moment. At this moment, Jianyu suddenly stood up. He looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression and said, Mr. Qin, I would like to make a deal with you on behalf of deity, Sword Manor. Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Jianyu, the deal you're talking about is related to the consul's insect leg, right? Don't think about it. I've already given the insect leg to my teacher and advisor. It's not with me. Jianyu was speechless when he heard Qin Chuan's words. He could only stare at Qin Chuan. He said that Qin Chuan had already given the insect leg to someone else. He couldn't possibly ask Qin Chuan to show him the storage ring. If he really said that, Qin Chuan would immediately fall out with him. Chapter 518. Qin Family Study. Qin Yiming looked at the optical computer in front of him and asked Qin who in the video. He rejected, yes. Qin who nodded and said helplessly, I already told him about second young Mrs. Spirit tablet returning to the family, but he still refused. No matter how much I tried to persuade him, he had no intention of giving the button back. That damn thing, Qin Yiming cursed. Is he really going to betray his master and destroy his ancestors? What is so bad about our Qin family that he hates so much? Isn't it good to return to our Qin family and become the successor and become the envy of everyone? Qin who looked at the enraged Qin Yiming with a troubled expression and said in a low voice, Patriarch, I also discovered something new. Qin Chuan has an expert by his side. Expert? Qin Yiming was stunned. What expert? Qin whose expression was serious. An expert suspected to be a nascent soul cultivator. Qin whose words completely stunned Qin Yiming. Qin Chuan had a nascent soul cultivator by his side? Are you sure this isn't a joke? Seeing Qin Yiming stunned, Qin who wasn't surprised. Well, he had this suspicion in his heart. He also felt that he was overthinking things. How could Qin Chuan have a nascent soul cultivator by his side? But if it wasn't a nascent soul cultivator, how could he have sent him to the hotel without him noticing? Qin Yiming looked at Qin who with a dark gaze and asked in a low voice, what exactly happened? Qin who immediately told Qin Yiming everything that had happened in detail. Qin Yiming couldn't help but fall silent after hearing Qin who's account. He was very clear about Qin who's strength. Even if he used his full strength as a peak Jindan stage cultivator, it was impossible for him to send Qin who away without any resistance. Furthermore, he had appeared in a distant place in an instant. Apart from a Yuanying stage cultivator, no one else could do this. After a long time, Qin Yiming looked deeply at Qin who and asked, what do you think is the possibility of that person being Ning Zhongtian? Qin who was shocked and cried out involuntarily, Ning Zhongtian? Apart from Ning Zhongtuan who might follow Qin Chuan, which nascent soul cultivator do you think would be willing to follow a junior like Qin Chuan? Qin Yiming said in a deep voice, have you forgotten the answer Ningyu gave us? She had said that Qin Chuan was cultivating with Ning Zhongtian, but she had never said that Ning Zhongtian and Qin Chuan were cultivating in the Black Moon Combat Academy. Qin Chuan suddenly appeared in the World Mountain, participated in the 1 versus 1,000 challenge in a mountain city, and went to the Sword God Gorge to comprehend the Milky Way sword intent. Isn't this the cultivation that Ning Zhongtian arranged for Qin Chuan? Hearing Qin Yiming's logical analysis, Qin who was shocked. Could it really be Ning Zhongtian? There are only a limited number of nascent soul cultivators in the Federation. Apart from Ning Zhongtian, who else do you think would have the time to follow a junior like Qin Chuan? Qin Yiming was certain that the person following Qin Chuan was definitely Ning Zhongtian. In his opinion, Ning Zhongtian was not only protecting Qin Chuan's safety, but also protecting the consul's worm leg. Their Qin clan wanted Qin Chuan to return to the clan, which was tantamount to interfering with Ning Zhongtian's interests. Naturally, Ning Zhongtian would send Qin Hu away. After understanding all this, Qin Yiming's expression couldn't help but turn ugly. After this incident, it would be difficult for the Qin clan to get in touch with Qin Chuan again. Furthermore, from Ning Zhongtian's attitude, It was obvious that he didn't want to cooperate with the Qin clan. Come back. There's no need to waste any more time. In the end, Qin Yiming decided to give up on persuading Qin Xuan and let Qin Hu return to make other plans. Yes, Qin Hu agreed softly. Qin Xuan had Ning Zhongtian by his side to protect him. He basically had no chance of getting close to Ning Zhongtian. There was nothing he could do even if he stayed here. Returning was the best and most helpless choice. After ending the video call, Qin Yiming couldn't hold back the anger in her heart. She violently swept the things on the desk onto the floor. No matter how good her self-control was, she couldn't help but roar at this moment, cursing at Qin Xuan and Ning Zhongtian. What happened? Just as Qin Yiming was venting her anger, Qin Chongxiao's figure suddenly appeared in the study. He frowned as he looked at the mess on the floor. In a low voice, he said, "As the head of the Qin clan, don't you even have the ability to control your own emotions? Look at yourself now. You're practically a piece of trash." Faced with Qin Chongxiao's scolding, Qin Yiming's raging heart immediately calmed down. With a guilty expression, she said to Qin Chongxiao, "I'm sorry, father. I've disappointed you." Qin Chongxiao slowly walked to the desk and sat down. He said calmly, "Speak. What happened?" "I asked Qin Hu to contact Qin Xuan and persuade Qin Xuan to return to the clan. However, Ning Zhongtian stopped him and the persuasion failed." Qin Yiming's face was sullen. "When has our Qin clan ever been looked down upon like this? This is a great humiliation." Qin Chongxiao frowned slightly. He asked doubtfully, "Didn't Qin Xuan go to the World Mountain? How did Ning Zhongtian stop him?" Qin Yiming replied, "Ning Zhongtian was by Qin Xuan's side. He also went to the World Mountain." Hearing Qin Yiming's reply, Qin Chongxiao was stunned. He had thought of countless possibilities, but he had never thought that Ning Zhongtian would go to the World Mountain. Impossible. Qin Chongxiao shook his head. Ning Zhongtian couldn't have left the Black Moon Combat Academy. Faced with Qin Chongxiao's assertion, Qin Yiming repeated Qin Hu's explanation to Qin Chongxiao. After hearing this, Qin Chongxiao couldn't help but feel suspicious. Ning Zhongtian has been guarding the cursed lands in the Black Moon Mountain Range for thousands of years. He shouldn't have left the Black Moon Combat Academy to go to the World Mountain. Qin Chongxiao frowned slightly. Isn't he afraid that something will happen to the cursed lands? Qin Yiming heard this and said, "Perhaps it has something to do with the consul's worm leg in Qin Xuan's hands. That item is extremely important to Ning Zhongtian." Hearing Qin Yiming mention the worm leg, Qin Chongxiao pondered for a moment. He then said to Qin Yiming, "Tell Qin Hu not to come back first. I'll go to the World Mountain as well." Qin Yiming was shocked. "You go to the World Mountain?" Qin Chongxiao nodded and said, "If Ning Zhongtian is really by Qin Xuan's side, it's normal that he didn't give Qin Hu a chance to persuade Qin Xuan. Because of the difference in status, if we want to unite the Black Moon Combat Academy and get through this trouble, I'll have to meet Ning Zhongtian personally and have a good talk with him." Qin Chongxiao looked deeply at Qin Yiming and said, "I don't believe that Ning Zhongtian can chase me out." Chapter 519. The matter of the sword intent riot in the Sword God Gorge had caused an uproar, attracting the attention of everyone in the World Mountain. At this time, the Mountain City also took the opportunity to announce the list of 50 gatekeepers for the 1 against 1,000 challenge. This time, there were no famous powerhouses among the gatekeepers. Most of them were unknown, but this was not the main point. The main point was that these 50 people were all in the Perfected Foundation establishment realm. No one expected that the Mountain City Arena could gather 50 cultivators in the Perfected Foundation establishment realm in just a few days. One had to know that in this arena, victory and defeat were determined, as well as life and death. Once you were defeated, your life and death would depend on others. If it was not for the pursuit of a breakthrough and excitement, very few high-level cultivators would be willing to participate in the arena's duel. Perfected Foundation establishment cultivators were already considered the backbone of the entire cultivation world. If they took another step forward, they would be a golden core cultivator. No matter where they went, they would be treated with respect. It could be said that their future was limitless. It was really not easy for the Mountain City Arena to be able to find 50 cultivators who were willing to participate in the duel in just 2 days. The list of gatekeepers released by the arena was very good at diverting some attention from the matter of the Sword God Gorge. However, as someone who was involved in both matters, Qin Chuan's attention was definitely at the top of the Mountain City. Regarding this, Qin Chuan could be said to be quite distressed. In the hotel, Qin Chuan sat on the balcony and looked through the window at the black mass of people downstairs. His face was full of helplessness. I suddenly feel like a celebrity. No matter where I go, there will be a group of fanatical fans following me. Qin Chuan sighed and said to Lion Ju, who looked like he was watching a show, "What are these people doing outside the hotel? Do they want me to share some of the Milky Way sword intent with them? They might not be here to see you." Lion Ju chuckled. "Don't think too much." Qin Chuan was slightly stunned when he heard this. He asked in confusion, "They didn't come here because of me? I just went downstairs to ask around. These people are here for the 9th lady of the Yin Mountain." Lion Baron smiled at Qin Chuan and explained, "Can you guess why the Yin Mountain 9th lady has come to Mountain Town?" Qin Chuan grinned and said, "There are so many people outside, and most of them are men. Could it be that the 9th Miss of Yin Mountain is here for a martial arts competition?" "You're right. It's a competition to find a spouse." Lion Duke looked at Qin Chuan strangely and asked, "But do you know what Lady 9 is?" "Things?" Qin Chuan was stunned. Was it really appropriate to describe the 9th young mistress of the Yin Mountain as an item? Seeing the puzzled look on Qin Chuan's face, Lion Duke smiled mysteriously and said to Qin Chuan, "The 9th lady of the Yin Mountain is not a human, but a ghost cultivator." Hearing Lion Duke's explanation, Qin Chuan was shocked. He said in disbelief, "Ghost cultivator?" As he spoke, Qin Chuan once again turned his gaze to the sea of people downstairs and said in astonishment, "But the people downstairs are clearly people." "Yes, they are people." Lion Baron chuckled. Yin Mountain became famous 1,000 years ago when Yin Mountain Lord appeared. This Yin Mountain Lord was quite capable. He created a set of cultivation methods called Yin Yang. Simply put, it's a dual cultivation method. However, this dual cultivation method isn't for 2 people or 2 ghosts. It's for 1 person and 1 ghost. Qin Chuan was shocked again. 1 person and 1 ghost dual cultivation. I'm not wrong, and you didn't hear wrong. It's 1 person and 1 ghost dual cultivation. Aren't you shocked? When I first heard of this, I also couldn't believe it. It's even more unbelievable than a human and a demon dual cultivation. How can 1 person and 1 ghost dual cultivate? This involves the core of this cultivation method. I'm not sure, but it's not a scam. It's true that 1 person and 1 ghost dual cultivate. Moreover, the cultivation speed is far faster than ordinary dual cultivation methods. Otherwise, it wouldn't attract so many people to come and join in the fun. Lion Duke pointed to the people downstairs and said to Qin Chuan, "The people you see are basically people with average talent and no future. They want to use some special means to improve their strength. These people are the same as the people we saw in the Sword God Gorge that day. They're all here to try their luck. In fact, they know very well that it's impossible for the 9th Miss of the Yin Mountain to choose them as dual cultivation partners." Qin Chuan nodded in agreement. Although he didn't know much about Yin Mountain, he thought that it was one of the major forces in Jia Mountain. As the leader of this major force, Miss Jio's vision couldn't be too bad. "So, do you want to give it a try?" Lion Duke said to Qin Chuan. "With your current fame, maybe you'll be fancied." Qin Chuan shook his head and said, "I think it's better to forget it. Although I don't have any opinions about ghost cultivation, I have opinions about dual cultivation methods." In Qin Chuan's understanding, dual cultivation was nothing more than using each other as a cauldron to absorb each other's strength for cultivation. Whether it was using others as a cauldron or himself as a cauldron, Qin Chuan didn't like it. "Ha ha ha. Maybe you'll be tempted when you see the 9th Miss as beautiful as a fairy?" Lion Duke laughed and didn't let go of this opportunity to tease Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan grinned and said, I have a lot of girls around me. All of them are as beautiful as fairies. Do you think I'll be tempted by this ninth miss? Hearing Qin Chuan mention the girls around him, Lion Duke suddenly became interested. He looked at Qin Chuan curiously and asked, Brat, you have so many beautiful girls around you. Don't tell me you don't like any of them? Faced with Lion Duke's question, Qin Chuan didn't know how to answer. If he said he didn't like any of them, he would be lying. But if he said he liked all of them, he would be a scumbag. Moreover, he didn't think he was qualified to fall in love now. Big cousin, I'll tell you the truth. I don't have the time, the mood, and the qualifications to like a girl now. No matter who I'm with, I'll only hurt them. Qin Chuan sighed and said helplessly, I have too many things to carry on my back. There are too many things I need to do. Before I solve those worries, I don't want to drag anyone down. Good, you're too good. Lion Duke gave Qin Chuan a thumbs up and asked, Do all the young ladies these days fall for your tricks? Do they like young geniuses like you, who have lofty ideals and ambitions, and who have hidden secrets? I can guarantee that if you repeat what you just said to a young girl, she'll fall in love with you. Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Lion Duke and felt he couldn't continue this conversation. Chapter 520. On the 9th floor of the hotel, the Inshan ninth young lady was cultivating in a cultivation room. She didn't care about the crowd outside at all. She had indeed come to Mountain City to find a suitable person for dual cultivation. However, she definitely wouldn't choose from the people downstairs because they weren't worthy. Ninth young lady. An enchanting figure slowly appeared on Miss Gio's body. Her feet were off the ground, and her enchanting face was pale. Hearing the person's call, the ninth young lady stopped cultivating. She opened her eyes and looked at the person. She said indifferently, What is it? The flirtatious woman respectfully handed a list of names to Miss Gio with both hands. She said to Miss Gio, this is the list of talented youths in Mountain City that I have collected. All the candidates that meet your requirements are on it. The ninth young mistress reached out and took the name list. She casually flipped through it and then asked indifferently, I heard that recently there's a cultivator called Qin Chuan who's especially famous in the Mountain City. Why isn't his name on the list? The beautiful woman was stunned for a moment, and then she quickly replied, Qin Chuan isn't someone from our world mountain. He's from the Star Dragon Federation. According to the rules of our Inshan City, he can't be added to the list. The ninth young lady looked at the alluring woman calmly and said, Since Qin Chuan is in World Mountain, he's from World Mountain. It's not against the rules to add him to the list. The alluring woman seemed to understand the ninth young lady's meaning. She immediately lowered her head and said, I understand. I'll do it right away. Go. The ninth young lady slowly closed her eyes. If there's nothing else, don't disturb me. Yes. The alluring woman's figure slowly dissipated and left the cultivation room. After the alluring woman left, the ninth young lady opened her eyes again. This time, her gaze was no longer calm. Instead, it was filled with violent killing intent. Just one day before the 1-against-1,000 challenge, En Mountain announced the list of candidates they had chosen for ninth young lady to practice dual cultivation with. There were a total of 10 people on the list. 5 of them were randomly selected from the streets outside the hotel. Their purpose was naturally to make up the numbers. The other 5 were the real candidates. However, that was not the main point. The main point was that Qin Chuan's name was also on the list. The rules of En Mountain had never been a secret. Almost everyone knew that the En Mountain would choose a native of the Jie Mountain when choosing a partner for dual cultivation. They would never choose the Yao clan or the humans of the Star Dragon Federation. However, this time, Qin Chuan, an outsider, had appeared on the list of candidates. It could be said that he had broken the rules of the Jie Mountain. For a time, Qin Chuan's name became a hot topic again. From the Sword Intent riot in the Sword God Canyon to the announcement of the list of gatekeepers in the arena to the ninth young lady choosing a partner for dual cultivation, Qin Chuan's name appeared in every sensational event. Even some people who were not interested in these things had now heard of Qin Chuan's name. Qin Chuan's feelings about his name appearing on the ninth young lady's list could be said to be very complicated. To be able to be chosen by the ninth young lady naturally meant that she recognized and appreciated him. However, he was really disgusted with dual cultivation. If she came to him and asked him to meet her, should he refuse or not? Once he refused the ninth young lady's kindness, he would definitely offend the ninth young lady in the Mountain. Then, he would inexplicably set up a great enemy. Just thinking about it gave Qin Xuan a headache. Lion Duke, who was sitting on the side, was eating fruit while smiling at Qin Xuan, who was full of worry. He sighed and said, "Kid, you are really lucky. The few big things that have happened recently in Jie Mountain are all related to you. Don't you think it's a coincidence?" Qin Xuan didn't know how to refute Lion Duke. He also felt that since he came to Jie Mountain, the whole place had become a little chaotic. However, he was really wronged. He originally planned to just pass by Jie Mountain. He didn't expect so many things to happen. Just as Qin Xuan was having a headache about these things, the doorbell of the room suddenly rang. Qin Xuan glanced at the surveillance video and couldn't help but show a look of surprise on his face. "Yao Rao? Ma Jiawen?" Qin Xuan was very surprised. Why did these two people suddenly come? At this time, Lion Duke also saw the two people in the surveillance video. He looked at Qin Xuan with a subtle look and said to Qin Xuan, "If they see me, they might recognize me. I will hide for a while." As he spoke, Lion Duke's figure disappeared along with the plate full of fresh fruits. Seeing that Lion Duke had hidden well, Qin Xuan opened the door and welcomed Yao Rao and Ma Jiawen in. He asked the two of them curiously, "Why are you here?" Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Yao Rao sneered, "What? Did we come at the wrong time and disturb you and Yinshan Ninth Mrs. Dual Cultivation?" Qin Xuan was stunned for a moment. He rolled his eyes and said, "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I'm talking nonsense. Could it be that the Qin Xuan on the list is someone else?" Yao Rao coldly snorted. "Who knows if you will covet Ninth Mrs. Beauty and take the opportunity to get close to her? I shouldn't have opened the door for you." Qin Xuan supported his forehead with his hand. He found that he was having a headache compared to before. Ma Jiawen stood at the side and helplessly looked at Yao Rao. Originally, they wanted to appear in front of Qin Xuan in another way, but because Yinshan Ninth Mrs. Dual Cultivation candidate list had Qin Xuan's name, Yao Rao couldn't bear it any longer. She rushed over in a hurry and really couldn't stop her. "You don't want to open the door for me. Then who do you want to open the door for? Yinshan Ninth Miss?" Yao Rao's face was filled with anger. "You really are interested in that female ghost." The corner of Qin Xuan's mouth fiercely twitched. He turned around and walked to the sofa and sat down. With a helpless look, he said, "Whatever you say, as long as you are happy. What kind of attitude is this?" Yao Rao was furious. "Are you patronizing me?" Looking at Yao Rao, who was chasing after him, Qin Xuan was extremely helpless. He really didn't have the mood to bicker with Yao Rao. But looking at Yao Rao's unforgiving appearance, if he didn't find a reason to block Yao Rao's mouth, then he feared that today wouldn't end. "Hey, classmate Yao Rao, please understand that we two are only friends. Don't you think you're meddling too much?" Qin Xuan sighed. "Don't say that I am not interested in Yinshan Ninth Miss who I have never met. Even if I am interested in her, what does that have to do with you? Friends?" Yao Rao sneered. "When you secretly kissed me in carefree secret territory, why didn't you think about our relationship?" Chapter 521. Qin Xuan was already powerless to ridicule. He knew that Yao Rao would bring up the matter of that time to talk about this matter. He also blamed himself for being obsessed at that time. How could he do such an imprudent thing? Seeing Qin Xuan was speechless, Yao Rao's face couldn't help but reveal a victorious smile, then said to Qin Xuan, "Nothing to say? Let me tell you, as long as you don't go to see that Yinshan's Ninth Miss, then I can let bygones be bygones." "Fine, I promise you," Qin Xuan helplessly said. "Moreover, even if you don't come, I also don't intend to see that Ninth Miss. I really don't have any interest in duo cultivation." Seeing Qin Xuan repeatedly emphasize that he wasn't interested in duo cultivation, Yao Rao also temporarily let go of Qin Xuan, no longer tangled with this topic, and asked about the matter of going to Heavenly Demon Mountain. "When you plan to set off for Heavenly Demon Mountain?" Having heard this, Qin Xuan replied without hesitation, Wait until the end of 1 versus 1,000 challenge in the arena. Then I will set off. Just in time, I also think so. I will wait for you here, and at that time we'll go back together. Yaorao casually took out a set of exquisite tea set and placed it on the table, then made a pot of good tea, then asked Qin Xuan, "Do you have confidence in winning the next battle?" Naturally. Qin Xuan chuckled, although 50 Great Foundation Establishment sounds somewhat formidable, but in fact it is just that. Qin Xuan had never thought of rushing through all the checkpoints. His purpose of participating in 1 versus 1,000 challenge was to sharpen himself in the life and death duel, not to win. As long as his purpose of sharpening himself was achieved, as for winning or losing, he didn't care. However, 50 Great Foundation Establishment, Qin Xuan felt that this should not be his limit. After going through 1 versus 1 and 1 versus 5 battles, Qin Xuan felt that his condition was a lot better than before, and there was no big problem with his foundation. Now the only thing left was to polish some details. Whether he polished these details in the arena or not, it didn't matter. So if it wasn't necessary, after completing 1 versus 50 challenge, he would choose to forfeit. As for whether it would cause gossip after forfeiting, it didn't matter. Seeing Qin Xuan so confident, Yaorao couldn't help but somewhat envied. "I also want to participate in this challenge. You say I will go to the opposite side to be your opponent, and after you kill the other 49 people, I will fight with you. What do you think?" "Nothing." Qin Xuan shook his head. "I have no interest in you." Hearing this, Yaorao was startled for a moment, then asked, "You have no interest in me? Do you mean you have no interest in fighting with me? Or you have no interest in any aspect?" This time it was Qin Xuan's turn to be startled. He looked at Yaorao with a strange expression and said, "From the moment you entered the door, I felt your behavior was somewhat strange. Now carefully think about it. You stopped me from going to Serene Mountain's 9th miss, and also asked me whether I have any interest in you. Could it be you like me?" After speaking these words, Qin Xuan firmly stared at Yaorao, waiting for Yaorao's reaction. As he expected, Yaorao immediately flew into a rage and loudly shouted, "Who likes you? Don't think too highly of yourself. Only ghosts would like you." Finished speaking, Yaorao turned around and left, and seeing this, Ma Jiawen somewhat helplessly followed. Seeing Yaorao and Ma Jiawen leaving, Qin Xuan couldn't help but curled his lips and said, "If you don't like me, then don't like me. Why are you so angry?" Whoosh! Lion Duke, holding a fruit plate, suddenly appeared in front of Qin Xuan, and looking at Qin Xuan with extremely strange expression, he asked, "Are you really stupid, or are you pretending to be stupid?" Having heard this, Qin Xuan somewhat doubtfully asked, "What's wrong?" "Yaorao, that little girl's performance clearly shows that she has taken a fancy to you. So what's wrong with you?" Lion Duke mischievously smiled. "I had never thought that our demon clan's pearl would actually like a human. Moreover, it is you, boy. If this matter were to spread out, I fear it would shock the world." Qin Xuan, somewhat startled, said, but she had already denied it a moment ago. "Don't you understand that saying one thing and thinking another? Girls are thin-skinned. After being exposed by you in front of her, how could she have the nerve to directly admit it?" Lion Duke rolled his eyes and said, "Boy, your experience is too little. After falling in love a few times, you will know, thinking of those years. Don't mention it, don't mention it." Qin Xuan looked at Lion Duke, who was shaking his head and sighing. It could be said that he was completely dumbfounded. Yaorao likes him? Yaorao actually likes him? Yaorao really likes him? Smelly brat, what are you thinking? I see that your head is full of question marks. Lion Duke looked at Qin Xuan with a beaming smile and asked, "Let me ask you, you have so many girls around you, which one do you like?" Hearing Lion Duke's question, Qin Xuan was silent for a moment, then faintly said to Lion Duke, "Originally, I thought that the one I like is my senior sister. I have always thought so, but when I am together with senior sister, other than feeling relieved, I don't have any other special feeling. But just a moment ago, when I thought that Yaorao likes me, and we might be together, I suddenly have a very special feeling in my heart. It seems somewhat sweet." When he said these words, the expression on Qin Xuan's face couldn't help but become extremely strange. "Ha ha ha, interesting, really interesting." Lion Duke laughed heartily, then said to Qin Xuan, I thought it was that little girl's unrequited love, but I didn't expect that you two actually have wishful thinking. Ha ha ha. Could it be that my demon race will really have a son-in-law of human race? Seeing Lion Duke laughing heartily, Qin Chuan scratched his head. He had never liked anyone before, so he also didn't know what kind of feeling it was to like someone. But if he and Yao Rao were to be together until their hair turned white, then he wouldn't resist, and even somewhat look forward to it. But Yao Rao was the princess of demon race, the master of heavenly demon mountain. So with the identity of human race, he might not necessarily get the approval of demon race. So if he really wanted to walk together with Yao Rao, then he must have enough strength to suppress all the opposing voices of human race and demon race. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan couldn't help but take a deep breath, then said to Lion Duke, "Big cousin, I hope you can keep this matter a secret for the time being. I don't want other people to know." As Lion Duke heard these words, he looked at Qin Chuan with some curiosity and asked, "Why?" Without waiting for Qin Chuan to speak, Lion Duke said again, "Are you worried that someone will obstruct you? Are you worried about the public opinion?" Qin Chuan remained silent. He really cared about what Lion Duke said. He really hoped that when he was together with the person he liked, he could get everyone's blessing and approval and not be questioned and abused. He could be wronged, but the person he liked couldn't. Qin Chuan deeply looked at Lion Duke and said, "Compared to being together, I hope that I can protect the person I like and not let her suffer any harm." Chapter 522. Miss Jiao, I'm Lu Qingfeng. The cultured and elegant Lu Qingfeng sat in front of Miss Jiao, looking extremely refined. Miss Jiao looked at Lu Qingfeng expressionlessly and said indifferently, "If you meet Qin Chuan, how confident are you in defeating him?" Hearing Miss Jiao's question, Lu Qingfeng's face could not help but reveal a shocked expression. He did not expect Miss Jiao to ask such a sharp question in her first sentence. Lu Qingfeng had some understanding of Qin Chuan. It was no exaggeration to say that Qin Chuan was definitely the strongest person he had seen in the foundation establishment stage. If he were to fight with Qin Chuan, his chances of winning would be less than 30%. However, he naturally could not tell Miss Jiao the truth. "I have some understanding of Qin Chuan. He is a very strong and unique person. I would like to get to know him and make friends with him. If I were to fight with him, I would have a 50% chance of winning." Lu Qingfeng smiled and casually exaggerated his chances of winning by 20%. Hearing Lu Qingfeng's answer, Miss Jiao could not help but reveal a sarcastic smile. She asked coldly, "Are you sure you have a 50% chance of winning against Qin Chuan?" Lu Qingfeng's expression changed slightly when he saw the undisguised mockery on the ninth young lady's face. He forced a smile and said, "This is just my personal deduction. We will only know the odds of victory after we fight. After all, we are all cultivators and are constantly getting stronger." Hearing Lu Qingfeng's explanation, Miss Jiao said indifferently, "I hate liars. You can leave now." Hearing Miss Jiao's order to leave, Lu Qingfeng's expression changed again. He said in a low voice, "Then I'll take my leave." Saying this, Lu Qingfeng stood up and prepared to leave. "Wait a minute." Miss Jiao suddenly called out to Lu Qingfeng again. Lu Qingfeng looked at Miss Jiao in confusion and asked, "Miss Jiao, is there anything else? Whether you and I are humans or ghosts, we are cultivators after all. You are just a country bumpkin who became the plaything of the West Wind Stronghold's fourth master with your good cultivation talent and appearance. Later, when the West Wind Stronghold was destroyed, you entered this mountain city and disguised yourself as a down-and-out young master. Everywhere you went to win the sympathy of the young ladies. It can be said that you lived a very carefree life. Originally, I was not in the mood to pay attention to people like you, but since you appeared on my list, then I can't pretend that I don't know anything, right?" Hearing the ninth lady's words, Lu Qingfeng's face was no longer as calm as before. His face turned pale, and his forehead was covered in a layer of cold sweat. He looked at the ninth lady with pleading eyes and pleaded, "Ninth lady, please forgive me this time. I won't do it again." The ninth lady looked at Lu Qingfeng coldly and said, "Get out of the city. Don't let me see you again. Yes, I'll leave immediately. Lu Qingfeng immediately turned and left. After taking 2 steps, he immediately changed to rolling on the ground. He quickly left like a ball, looking extremely funny. After Lu Qingfeng left, the coquettish woman who followed the ninth lady immediately appeared and knelt in front of the ninth lady. She said with great fear, "I deserve to die. I deserve to die." The ninth lady looked at the coquettish woman indifferently and asked, "Ali, how long have you been with me?" Ali replied in a low voice, "Ninth lady, I've been with you for a year and 3 months. More than a year. You can be considered an old person by my side." The ninth lady sighed softly. "In the future, don't let me down again. Once is enough." Yes, this subordinate understands. Ali had already agreed. This subordinate will definitely not disappoint the ninth young lady in the future. All right, Lu Qingfeng's matter is over. The ninth lady waved her hand and said, "Now go and invite Qin Chuan here. If he doesn't come, you know the consequences." Ali's expression immediately became serious. "I understand. I'll do it right away." In the restaurant of the hotel, Qin Chuan and Su Kuang sat opposite each other. "Qin Chuan, you seem to be doing well in the World Mountain." Su Kuang looked at Qin Chuan with a smile. "Even the ninth lady of the Yin Mountain is interested in you. You're not simple." Qin Chuan was a little speechless when he heard this. "When I first met you, I thought you were a quiet and withdrawn person. Now, no matter how I look at you, you look like a chatterbox. Even food can't stop you from talking." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Su Miao, who was sitting next to Su Kuang, nodded with emotion. In the past, she always thought that Su Kuang was a relatively cold and cool person. However, since she met Qin Chuan, Su Kuang changed. Especially in front of Qin Chuan, Su Kuang's Prince Charming temperament would completely become funny. Not only did he become talkative, but he was also very coquettish. This made Su Miao suspect that Su Kuang was possessed by a wretched man. "Tell me, is the ninth young mistress of the Yin Mountain pretty?" Su Kuang laughed. Although the ninth lady is a ghost cultivator, she may have a chance to rebuild her body after reaching the nascent soul stage. Before Qin Chuan could speak, Su Miao, who was sitting next to him, couldn't help but say to Su Kuang, "Senior brother, your smile just now was too wretched." Hearing this, Su Kuang's expression immediately became somewhat awkward. Qin Chuan laughed and said to Su Kuang, "Did you see that? Even your junior sister can't stand it anymore." Just as Qin Chuan and the others were talking and laughing, Ali's enchanting figure suddenly appeared at the table. She looked at Qin Chuan with charming eyes and whispered, "Greetings, young Master Qin. I'm Ali." Seeing Ali suddenly appear, Su Kuang and Su Miao looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression. This was because they had seen Ali before and knew that she was the maid of the ninth lady of the Yin Mountain. This was the first time Qin Chuan saw Ali. However, with his eyesight, he immediately saw that Ali was a ghost cultivator. He looked at Ali with a subtle expression and asked, "Do you need something from me?" "The ninth lady invites you." Ali made an inviting gesture, wanting to invite Qin Chuan to the ninth lady's room as a guest. At this time, there were many people eating in the hotel's restaurant. They all noticed the situation here. Seeing the maid of the ninth lady of the Yin Mountain come to invite Qin Chuan to the ninth lady's room as a guest, a touch of ambiguity appeared on everyone's face. Qin Chuan pondered for a moment and said to Ali, "Sorry, I'm eating with a friend." Ali didn't feel that there was anything wrong with Qin Chuan's refusal. However, the ninth lady gave a strict order that she must invite Qin Chuan, so she asked Qin Chuan, "Then when will young Master Qin be free?" Qin Chuan looked at Ali seriously and replied, "I'm not free recently." Chapter 5:23. Ali could tell that Qin Chuan didn't have time to meet her because he was eating with his friends, but because he didn't want to meet her at all. Not only did Ali hear the hidden meaning in Qin Chuan's words, but the others also heard it. The way they looked at Qin Chuan became somewhat subtle. Miss Jiao didn't have to choose Qin Chuan, but Qin Chuan didn't even want to meet her. This was a bit disrespectful. As a major force in the Jia Mountain, it wasn't easy to offend them. Ali narrowed her eyes slightly and said to Qin Chuan, "Young Master Qin, although cultivation is important, you also have to pay attention to the balance. Making new friends is a good thing for you to travel in the Jia Mountain. Having more friends is better than having more enemies." Qin Chuan smiled slightly and said to Ali, "I'm naturally willing to make new friends, but I really don't have time now. When I have time, I'll naturally meet Miss Gio." If Ali had been kind enough to persuade him, perhaps Qin Chuan would have wanted to see this ninth young Mississippi. However, Ali had threatened to make an enemy out of him at the slightest disagreement. This made him very unhappy. Hearing Qin Chuan refuse again, Ali's face suddenly became gloomy, and the gaze she looked at Qin Chuan also became sharp. "Young Master Qin, you have to think carefully. Offending the people of the Een Mountain doesn't necessarily have a good ending." While speaking, Ali looked at Su Kuang and the others and said in a deep voice, "Young Master Qin, your friends are powerful, but that's only in the Star Dragon Federation. They might not be able to help you here. Of course, if young Master Qin is afraid and wants to leave the GM Mountain immediately, then just pretend I didn't say anything." Hearing Ali's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but reveal a subtle expression and asked, "You're worried I'll be afraid of the Een Mountain and flee back to the Star Dragon Federation. So you deliberately said this?" Ali remained silent. This was what she meant. As for how to interpret it, it was up to Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan understood what Ali meant when he saw Ali refuse to explain. He chuckled and said to Ali, "Since you've put it like that, then I'll be blunt and tell you that I'm really not afraid of your Een Mountain. In my opinion, besides Lord Een Mountain, everyone else on Een Mountain is trash. If you don't want face, then I won't give you face." Qin Chuan would not be afraid, even if the Een Mountain Lord came personally. At worst, he would use up one chance to ask the Lion Duke to help him. As soon as Qin Chuan finished speaking, the entire restaurant was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Everyone looked at Qin Chuan in shock, as if they couldn't believe that Qin Chuan would actually say such domineering words. Other people would try their best not to offend the people from Een Mountain, but Qin Chuan was different. It was fine if they didn't offend him, but if they did, they would offend a lot of people. Aside from the Een Mountain Lord, everyone else in Een Mountain is trash? You're really daring to say that. Ali looked at Qin Chuan with some astonishment. Her face was no longer as cold as before. She couldn't believe her ears. Someone in the GM Mountain actually dared to say that the Een Mountain was trash. After the astonishment, Ali quickly came back to her senses. She looked at Qin Chuan with a gloomy expression and said angrily, "Qin Chuan, you'll definitely pay for your words." Facing the angry Ali, Qin Chuan smiled and said calmly, "I'll wait for you to make me pay." Before the sky darkened, the conversation between Qin Chuan and Ali in the restaurant had already spread throughout Mountain City. Qin Chuan was on fire. This time, Qin Chuan was completely on fire. In the entire Mountain City, even a 3-year-old child knew that there was a person called Qin Chuan. He was extraordinarily daring. If Qin Chuan wasn't daring enough, how could he say something like that to offend the entire Een Mountain? Now, everyone knew that Qin Chuan had publicly challenged the Een Mountain. He had said that aside from the Een Mountain Lord, everyone else in the Een Mountain was trash. If the Een Mountain didn't teach Qin Chuan a lesson, then everyone in the Jia Mountain would be able to step on Een Mountain in the future. Now, everyone was waiting to see how the Een Mountain would respond to Qin Chuan. While everyone was talking about this matter, Qin Chuan, the main character of this matter, was resting in his room. Lion Duke, who was sitting in front of him, had a helpless expression on his face. "Qin Chuan, you really have the guts to say something like that." Lion Duke smiled bitterly. If your words were to spread back to the Een Mountain, it would definitely anger them. Even the Een Mountain Lord might come out of seclusion to look for you. Aren't you afraid that the Een Mountain Lord will slap you to death? Qin Chuan grinned and said to Lion Duke, "Big cousin, aren't you here? Why would I be afraid of the Een Mountain Lord?" Lion Duke was speechless. He rolled his eyes and said, "I knew you were thinking about me. I'm telling you, the Een Mountain Lord became famous 1,000 years ago. He's very strong. If I were to fight him, I have a 50% chance of winning. I won't be able to take care of you. If the Mountain Lord wants to deal with you, you'd better be careful. Hearing Lion Duke's reminder, Chinchuan's face became serious. He looked at Lion Duke and said, "If the Mountain Lord really comes, you just have to stop him. Leave the rest to me." Lion Duke saw that Chinchuan was ready, so he didn't say anything. He was focused on recalling what he had heard about the Mountain Lord. With his current strength, his chances of winning against the Mountain Lord weren't high. Seeing that Lion Duke was thinking, Chinchuan didn't want to disturb him. Just as he was about to go back to his room to rest, his light brain suddenly flashed. He had received a new email. Chinchuan opened his light brain and took a look. The email was sent by Yaorao. "This Empress will give you a chance. As long as you take the initiative to come to this Empress's room tonight and apologize to this Empress for the matter of last time, this Empress will help you block the Mountain Lord." Seeing the content of the email, Chinchuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This Yaorao was really fearless no matter what she encountered. Mountain Lord was a Yuanying realm expert. Mountain Lord. You want to block the Mountain Lord? Have you considered the feelings of your father Emperor? After thinking for a moment, Chinchuan decided to reply to Yaorao. "I didn't do anything wrong last time. As for the Mountain Lord, you don't need to worry about it. I have a way to block it." Coming. Yaorao saw her light brain lit up. She immediately opened the email. When she saw the content of Chinchuan's email, her face suddenly showed a touch of dissatisfaction. "What do you mean you didn't do anything wrong? What do you mean I don't need to worry about it? Do you think this Empress is happy to care about you? Really?" Yaorao muttered, then said to Ma Jiaowen, who was sitting at the side with a smile, "Don't you think so?" Yes. Ma Jiaowen smiled. She found that after knowing Chinchuan, the always aloof and cold temperament princess, Yaorao had now become soft and cute. Chapter 5:24. Asterisk clap. Asterisk following an extremely crisp slap. Ali's cheeks quickly swelled up. This was an extremely special thing for a ghost cultivator who didn't have a physical body. That kind of pain directly affected the soul. The ninth young mistress looked at Ali with an extremely gloomy gaze and said coldly, "I told you to invite Chinchuan as a guest. Is this how you do it? This subordinate is useless. Please punish me, ninth young mistress." Ali knelt before the ninth young mistress with a terrified expression. The conversation between her and Chinchuan had already been spread word for word. Everyone felt that Chinchuan's rejection was already very tactful. She was the one who had used the Mountain's power to be aggressive, and that was why Chinchuan had said those words to humiliate the entire Mountain. To put it simply, her inappropriate words had caused the entire Mountain to be humiliated. She had to bear this crime. Moreover, she was the personal maid of the ninth young mistress. The ninth young mistress might be implicated because of this and be punished by the Mountain Lord. As for her, there was a high chance that her soul would scatter. Just thinking about this caused Ali to feel cold all over. "I'll punish you?" The ninth young mistress sneered. "You cause my matter, my reputation, and the entire Mountain. How do you think I should punish you so that you won't die?" Ali immediately said in horror, "Ninth young mistress, I really know I was wrong." "You know you were wrong?" "I know I was wrong too. I shouldn't have sent you to invite Chinchuan. If it was someone else, even if Chinchuan didn't come, this wouldn't have happened." The ninth young mistress said angrily, "Now it's not just you. Perhaps even I will be punished." Ali also knew that the ninth young mistress would definitely be implicated by her, but she really didn't know what to do other than rely on the ninth young mistress. Asterisk, whoosh asterisk at this moment. A chilly wind blew, and Ali's figure suddenly became transparent. After sensing the change in her body, Ali's expression immediately became incomparably terrified and desperate. However, in just a moment, her body completely dissipated. Miss Jiu sat on the sofa with an extremely complicated expression on her face. After a person died, their soul could still survive and become a ghost cultivator. However, once the soul dissipated, there would no longer be a person in this world. There would not even be a chance for reincarnation. "Are you feeling sorry for her?" A cold voice sounded behind the ninth young lady. A tall figure stood there and looked at the ninth young lady with gentle eyes. I'm not feeling sorry for her. I'm feeling sorry for us ghost cultivators. Once our souls are scattered, we won't exist in this world anymore. The ninth young mistress sighed. So, life is really fragile. They're the ones who are vulnerable, not you, not me. The ninth young mistress turned to look at the figure behind her and asked, Su Chuan, are you here to take me back to Yin Mountain for punishment? Su Chuan shook his head. Father was very angry when he heard the news. He sent me here to punish the culprit. Father knows you're innocent. The culprit? The ninth young mistress looked at Su Chuan and asked, Is Qin Chuan the culprit? Hearing her question, Su Chuan smiled slightly. Of course. If he doesn't die, won't the name of Yin Mountain be trampled on for the rest of my life? The ninth young mistress looked at Su Chuan with a subtle expression and said seriously, With your strength at the early stage of the Gold Core realm, you may not be able to kill him. Although Su Chuan didn't want to admit it, what the ninth young mistress said was the truth. He had to admit that although Qin Chuan was only at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he had many tricks up his sleeves. It was indeed difficult for him to kill Qin Chuan. You can help me. Su Chuan looked at the ninth young mistress. If we join forces, we can definitely kill him. The ninth young mistress took a deep look at Su Chuan and nodded. Then let's join forces and kill him together. Are you Mr. Qin? A ghost blocked Qin Chuan's way, but he was very polite. Qin Chuan looked at the ghost standing in front of him and nodded. I'm Qin Chuan. Are you from Yin Mountain? Ghost nodded and handed a gilded invitation to Qin Chuan. He said respectfully, Mr. Qin, this is the invitation that my third young master asked me to give you. He will go to the mountain banquet hall tonight to discuss and solve the problem together. Also, Lady Ghost, who offended you before, has been executed. Hearing Ghost's words, Qin Chuan raised his eyebrows slightly and asked curiously, Who is your third young master? Ghost replied, The third son of Yin Mountain, Su Chuan. Qin Chuan glanced at the invitation that Ghost handed over. After pondering for a moment, he took the invitation and said to Ghost, Go back and tell your third young master that I have no intention of offending Yin Mountain. It will be best if the matter can be resolved peacefully. I will be on time for the banquet tonight. After receiving Qin Chuan's affirmative reply, Ghost slowly retreated. I will pass on your message. Goodbye. Qin Chuan stood in place and watched Ghost's figure gradually disappear. After confirming that there was no one around, he could not help but reveal a subtle expression. He muttered in a low voice, I'm afraid tonight's banquet will be a Hongmin banquet. In the hotel room, Su Chuan could not help but sneer after hearing Ghost's report. This Qin Chuan is quite sensible. He knows that he can't afford to offend Yin Mountain and wants to resolve the matter peacefully. However, he should think about it carefully. Is he worthy of resolving the matter peacefully with us, with his status? Su Chuan sneered and said to Miss Jiao, who was sitting beside him, Little Jiao, kill that guy tonight. We will hang his head in front of the mountain city's gate and let everyone take a good look. This is the consequence of offending Yin Mountain. Miss Jiao thought for a moment and said to Su Chuan, Since Qin Chuan dares to come, he must be prepared for the negotiation to fail. If he is prepared, it will be difficult for the two of us to take him down in a short period of time, even if we work together. Once we cause a commotion and attract the guards of the mountain city, things will be troublesome. Martial arts had always been prohibited in the mountain city. They were going to make a move on Qin Chuan tonight. If they could not end the battle quickly, it would be difficult for them to have such an opportunity in the future. I've already thought about what you said. Su Chuan chuckled and calmly said to Miss Jiao, Take a look at what this is. As he spoke, Su Chuan took out a pair of bronze tokens and said to Miss Jiao, Father gave this to me before I left. Father's shadow shifting technique is sealed on it. When the time comes, I just need to activate one of the tokens, and the person who is guided by my remembrance will immediately be teleported to the location of the other token. We just need to place the other token outside the mountain city and directly teleport you, me, and Qin Chuan over. Naturally, we will be able to bypass the guards of the mountain city. Chapter 525. Leo Baron sat in front of Qin Chuan, looking at Qin Chuan, who was looking for information about the Een Mountain's third master, Su Chuan. He asked, "They're obviously looking for trouble with you. Why do you still want to go?" Qin Chuan looked up at Leo Baron and said, "I have an indescribable feeling. It's like there's something I need to solve, so I agreed." Leo Baron looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "Do you need me to protect you?" Qin Chuan didn't stand on ceremony. He nodded and said, "Although the other party probably won't make a move against me in the city, I'm afraid that they will take the risk out of desperation. So I'll have to trouble Big Cousin to protect me in secret tonight. With me here, there won't be any problems." Leo Baron laughed. "Unless the Een Mountain King comes, no one could do anything to you." As a veteran Demon King, Lion Duke still had this bit of confidence. If he really allowed a gold core stage brat to kill Qin Chuan in front of him, then he might as well commit suicide. Living on was simply too shameful. Seeing how confident Leo Baron was, Qin Chuan felt a little uneasy. But then again, the matter between him and Een Mountain had just happened. As the biggest boss of Een Mountain King had no reason to show up so soon. According to common sense, he'd have to wait until he killed a few of the more important people in Een Mountain before Een Mountain King could take action. After all, he was just a small fry in Een Mountain King's eyes. He wasn't worth his attention. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan's heart calmed down. The appointed time on the invitation was 7 o'clock in the evening, but Qin Chuan went out before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He wanted to check out the situation outside the mountain banquet hall in advance. Although there was a high probability that there would be no problem with the Lion Duke's protection, it was never wrong to be careful. Qin Chuan wore a black cloak and sat in the bar opposite the mountain banquet tower. He drank and ate snacks while looking through the window at the pedestrians on the street and the customers entering and exiting the mountain banquet tower. After more than an hour, he didn't find anyone suspicious. It wasn't until 6 o'clock that the ghost he saw this afternoon appeared again. This ghost followed behind a man and a woman as they walked down from the shuttle and headed straight for the mountain banquet tower. Qin Chuan looked at the backs of these three people and could not help but frown slightly. Lion Lord, who was sitting across from Qin Chuan, saw Qin Chuan's expression change. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What did you find?" Qin Chuan said hesitantly, "That person's back looks familiar to me. I think I've seen him somewhere before, but I can't remember where." Lion Ju was a little surprised. "You've seen Een Mountain's third young master, Su Chuan?" "It's not Su Chuan. It's the woman next to him." Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said, "It should be Miss Jiao." "Ha ha! You think Miss Jiao's back looks familiar?" Lion Lord laughed and said, "Are you regretting rejecting her kindness?" Qin Chuan was speechless. He could see that Lion Lord was an old hooligan. No matter what the occasion was, he would joke around with others. But this joke wasn't funny at all. Lion Lord was the only one laughing. But after laughing, Lion Lord's expression suddenly became serious. He said to Qin Chuan, "According to Een Mountain's rules, outsiders can't be added to the list of candidates for dual cultivation. But your name was added. This is a problem. Now that you think Miss Jiao's back looks familiar, it means she's an old friend of yours. If they're looking for you today to resolve the conflict, it means you and Miss Jiao are friends. But if it's the other way around, you should be careful tonight." Hearing Lion Lord's words, Qin Chuan frowned and whispered, "I've never been to Jia Mountain before. I've never met any ghost cultivator friends, and I've never been an enemy of any ghost cultivator. This is really strange." "Who cares? You'll know when you see her." "That's right. When I see her, I'll know who she is." At 6:45 in the evening, Qin Chuan left Leisure Bar. After circling around, he appeared outside the door of Mountain Banquet Tower. When Qin Chuan appeared, the waiter of Mountain Banquet Tower immediately walked up with a smile and said to Qin Chuan in a sweet voice, "Mr. Qin, third young master Su is waiting for you in the heavenly box." Qin Chuan glanced at the fluffy white ears on the waiter's head and asked curiously, "Are you a rabbit?" The waiter blushed slightly and whispered, "I'm from the Demon Clan. I'm from the White Rabbit tribe of Jia Mountain." When Qin Chuan heard this, he nodded his head in understanding. Then, He looked at the other waiters. They were all white rabbits with long ears. The welcoming service of the mountain banquet hall was quite good. Under the guidance of the waiter, Qin Xuan came to the heavenly box. The door was open, and Ghost Demon stood there waiting for him. "Mr. Qin, please come in." Ghost Demon bowed respectfully to Qin Xuan and invited Qin Xuan in. Qin Xuan didn't stand on ceremony and walked in. The box was very big. In addition to dining, it also had karaoke and dancing functions. It also had a small bar with all kinds of famous wines. The facilities could be said to be quite complete. When Qin Xuan came in, a tall figure was mixing wine in front of the bar. He was very focused. Seeing this person, Qin Xuan recognized at first glance that it was Su Chuan, the third young master of Yin Mountain. Just as Qin Xuan was sizing up Su Chuan had finished mixing the wine. He walked to Qin Xuan with 2 glasses of wine and smiled at Qin Xuan. "Your name has the word Chuan, and so does mine. It's fate." While speaking, Su Chuan handed the wine glass in his hand to Qin Xuan. "I've heard of your name for a long time." Qin Xuan naturally reached out to take the wine glass and smiled. "How can I be considered famous? Compared to Mr. Su, I'm just a nobody." A nobody wouldn't dare to participate in the challenge of 1 against 1,000, and they wouldn't dare to say such words to our Yin Mountain. Su Chuan looked at Qin Xuan with a subtle gaze and asked, "What do you think, Mr. Qin?" Qin Xuan smiled and didn't answer Su Chuan. Instead, he looked around and asked curiously, "Ninth young lady didn't come?" Ninth young lady was grounded because of what happened last time. "She can't come out for the time being." Su Chuan explained faintly, "Only you and I are eating today. There's no one else." Hearing Su Chuan's words, Qin Xuan couldn't help but reveal a subtle look. If the ghost cultivator who walked into the mountain banquet tower with Su Chuan was a ninth young lady, then who is it? Chapter 5:26. Qin Xuan and Su Chuan sat opposite each other at the table. The waiter quickly served the sumptuous dishes, filling the table. Qin Xuan looked at the table full of dishes and smiled at Su Chuan. "Thank you for your hospitality. I won't stand on ceremony." As he spoke, Qin Xuan had already picked up his chopsticks and started eating. He looked like he was enjoying the food. Seeing this, Su Chuan couldn't help but reveal a subtle expression on his face. He asked Qin Xuan, "Aren't you afraid that I'll poison the food?" Hearing Su Chuan's question, Qin Xuan chuckled. He casually picked up the wine jug beside him and poured himself a cup of wine. Then he said to Su Chuan, "If I were afraid of you, I wouldn't have come to the banquet. You're very bold." Su Chuan looked at the smile on Qin Xuan's face. "Are you really not afraid of death? If you're not afraid, why should I be afraid?" Qin Xuan looked at Su Chuan with a playful expression. "If I die, there's still the possibility of becoming a ghost cultivator. After a few hundred years, I might be able to reconstruct my physical body. But if you die, you're really dead. Your souls will scatter. After 10 or 20 years, who in this world will still remember you?" Hearing this, Su Chuan's expression suddenly became gloomy. The gaze he looked at Qin Xuan with became extremely cold. "Judging from your behavior, you didn't plan to have a good talk with me from the beginning, right?" Seeing Su Chuan's expression change, Qin Xuan chuckled. "Just now, I clearly saw you and the ninth young lady walk into the mountain banquet hall together. Now you're telling me that the ninth young lady is grounded. Between the two of us, who is the insincere one?" Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Su Chuan looked deeply at Qin Xuan and said, "I really underestimated you. I didn't expect you to arrive in advance to observe. It's always right to be careful, and my choice is obviously correct." Qin Xuan smiled and said, "Now, can we invite that ninth young mistress to come out and meet us?" As Qin Xuan's voice fell, an extremely shocking killing intent suddenly appeared in the private room. "Qin Xuan, do you still recognize me?" An extremely tyrannical voice rang out behind Qin Xuan. When Qin Xuan heard this voice, he subconsciously turned around. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly distorted. When everything returned to normal, he was no longer in the heaven-class box of the mountain banquet tower, but in the wilderness. Seeing the scene before him change, Chuan's first thought was not camouflage, but that the other party had used some kind of spatial teleportation to teleport him out of the city. Seeing Chuan's expression change, Chuan chuckled and said to Chuan, "Although you've been careful enough, you're still too careless. We've already set up an inescapable net here. You can't escape." Hearing Chuan's words, Chuan's mood did not change. This was because when he chose to come to the banquet, he was already mentally prepared to be ambushed. However, when he saw the ninth young mistress standing beside Chuan's face, his mood was somewhat unsettled. "I really didn't expect that you're the ninth young mistress of Yin Mountain City." Chuan looked at the ninth young mistress with a complicated gaze and asked, "Should I call you ninth young mistress or Limani?" Chuan could never have imagined that the ninth young mistress of the Yin Mountain City was actually the second young mistress of the Leaf family of Xiang City, Limani. To this day, he still clearly remembered the encounter in the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. He happened to meet Yu Kai, and her group from Xiang City. They were attacked by a golden-haired monkey. At that time, Limani died at the hands of the golden-haired monkey. He was also implicated and was treated as the murderer of Limani by the Leaf family. Later, he left Xiang City and never went back, nor did he see Limani again. He did not expect that they would meet again in such a special way today. "Chuan, so you still remember me?" Limani stared fiercely at Chuan. "It's fine that you killed me back then, but why did you kill my sister and destroy her soul?" Chuan was stunned for a moment, then sighed and said, "So your sister's soul was destroyed. Those who kill will be killed by others. Your sister attacked me first, so I was forced to defend myself. She died because of her own killing intent and arrogance. What does it have to do with me?" "Ha! What does it have to do with you?" Limani laughed crazily. "Today I'll avenge my sister and send you to the underworld to repent to her." "You're wrong." Chuan shook his head. "Your sister's soul was destroyed. Even if I go to the underworld, I won't be able to see her. How can I repent to her?" What a sharp tongue. Chuan couldn't stand it anymore. He said to Limani, "Ninth young mistress, he's obviously stalling for time. To avoid any more trouble, let's kill him first." Hearing Chuan's words, Limani also knew that she had been tricked by Chuan. She immediately shouted at Chuan, "Go to hell." Seeing that Chuan and Limani were about to attack, Chuan sighed helplessly. He had just looked around and found that there was a restriction formation around them. The people inside should not be able to escape. He could only wait passively for Lion Duke to come to rescue him. He hoped that he could hold on until then. When Chuan had these thoughts in his mind, Chuan and Limani had already arrived in front of him. As a gold core cultivator, Chuan had the ability to fly, so his speed was extremely fast. He was almost behind Chuan in an instant. Among the ghostly shadows, a ferocious and sharp claw stretched out and went straight for Chuan's back. On the other side, Limani's movements were not slow either. She rushed in front of Chuan with a sharp roar. Her right hand turned into a sharp claw, and she grabbed at Chuan's neck. In the face of Limani and Chuan's pincer attack, Chuan did not hesitate to transform into his dragon form. He used the mystical dragon tail to repel Chuan and Limani. At the moment when Chuan was repelled, his figure flashed and once again approached Chuan. He landed on Chuan's back and viciously tore apart Chuan's dragon body with his claw. Golden blood suddenly poured out. Chuan twisted his body and spat a ball of dragon's breath at Chuan. Chuan's figure flashed again and easily dodged the dragon's breath. At the same time, he attacked again and tore off several blood-stained dragon scales from Chuan's body. At the same time, Limani once again pressed over. Her ghostly aura was dense as she used her soul power to attack Chuan. Roar! Chuan looked up to the sky and roared. He spat out dragon's breath again and again to protect himself. However, although Limani was restricted by the dragon's breath and could not get close to him, Chuan, who was a gold core cultivator, was not afraid at all. Whoosh! A burst of air-piercing sound was heard. Su Chuan's figure suddenly appeared above Qin Chuan's head and wanted to kill Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan sensed Su Chuan's intention and immediately used his dragon horn to release the power of thunder to stop Su Chuan. Unexpectedly, Su Chuan suddenly retreated. Chapter 5:27. Seeing Su Chuan retreat, Qin Chuan immediately realized that Su Chuan, as a ghost cultivator, was most afraid of the power of thunder. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan immediately dispelled his dragon form, and then took out 2 pieces of medium-grade thunder spiritual stones from his storage ring. In an instant, he inscribed the Thunder Manipulation Charm Array. Thunder Dragon. Qin Chuan shouted in a low voice, and a huge thunder dragon appeared in each of his hands. They roared and rushed towards Su Chuan and Li Mani respectively. Seeing Qin Chuan's counterattack, Li Mani was shocked and turned to run. On the other side, Su Chuan's situation was not much better than Li Mani's. Although the Thunder Dragon could not touch him, when he wanted to attack Qin Chuan, the Thunder Dragon would always block his way. Damn it! Su Chuan gritted his teeth. If I had known, I would not have dodged just now. I would have killed him directly with my palm. Unfortunately, it was too late for Su Chuan to regret. At this time, Qin Chuan had reacted and made the best response. Now, if he wanted to kill Qin Chuan, it would not be as simple as being injured. Just as Su Chuan was thinking about these things, Li Mani, who was slightly weaker, had been defeated by Qin Chuan. She could not hold on any longer. I'll kill you. Li Mani was finally forced to lose her mind by Qin Chuan. She roared, Night of 100 Ghosts. Following Li Mani's roar, countless ferocious-looking evil spirits suddenly appeared around her. They roared and rushed in all directions. Li Mani's figure mixed in with these evil spirits and suddenly disappeared. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. He subconsciously recalled the 2 thunder dragons and formed a thunder shield around his body. At the same time, Li Mani's figure appeared not far from him, staring at him angrily. Qin Chuan, I must kill you. Li Mani was about to go crazy. She really didn't expect that she and Su Chuan together couldn't do anything to Qin Chuan. At this time, Su Chuan's figure appeared beside Li Mani. He said to Li Mani with some annoyance, I was careless. I forgot that his talent Rune is a thunder attribute. As ghost cultivators, what they were most afraid of was the power of lightning. With just this, Qin Chuan was enough to offset the advantage of the 2 of them joining forces. Furthermore, his advantage of being in the gold core stage was useless against the impenetrable protection of the Thunder Shield. It was not worth it to destroy the power that he had cultivated for half of his life just to kill Qin Chuan. Seeing that they couldn't do anything to Qin Chuan, Li Mani couldn't help but say angrily, We set up this inescapable trap. Are we going to fail like this? In the face of Li Mani's anger, Su Chuan was also somewhat helpless. He didn't know much about Qin Chuan. He thought that relying on his advantage in cultivation and Li Mani's assistance would be enough to kill Qin Chuan. He didn't expect that things would develop to such an embarrassing point. If he had known this, he wouldn't have attacked Qin Chuan so easily. Why don't you fight? Come on, let's continue. Li Mani and Su Chuan stopped, but Qin Chuan was not happy. He had just found a way to restrain ghost cultivators and was about to try it out. How could they stop? Looking at Qin Chuan's arrogant look, Su Chuan was so angry that his teeth itched, but he couldn't do anything. As a practitioner in the gold core stage, he was humiliated by a little guy in the late foundation establishment stage and couldn't fight back. It was simply a great shame. On the other side, Li Mani thought of her sister's death and the oath she made to the way of heaven. Her expression suddenly became resolute, and she said coldly, Su Chuan, I'll break his thunder shield with the soul dispersing technique. You kill him. Hearing Li Mani's words, Su Chuan was shocked and said, Soul dispersing technique? Are you crazy? I'm not crazy. I'm very calm. If I can't kill Qin Chuan in the face of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I will really go crazy. Li Mani roared, I must kill him. Su Chuan really didn't expect that Li Mani's hatred for Qin Chuan had reached such a deep level. She would rather disperse her realm to kill Qin Chuan. Well, since you've made up your mind, I won't persuade you anymore. Su Chuan looked deeply at Li Mani and said, I will do my best to kill Qin Chuan. Li Mani didn't respond to Su Chuan's words. She used practical actions to show Su Chuan her attitude. When the soul-dispersing technique was used, Li Mani's face couldn't help but show a touch of pain. Her solid body also became somewhat transparent. The thick ghost she wanted to disperse in all directions, as if a gust of wind could blow her soul away. When Li Mani began to use the soul-dispersing technique, Qin Chuan also noticed the situation here. He glanced at Li Mani's movements, and then, without hesitation, he used 2 new pieces of mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone to strengthen the Thunder Shield. After that, he took out a talisman pin and began to inscribe the all-directional Thunder Prison on the disc array. He didn't want to wait for death. He wanted to make the first move. Just as Qin Chuan began to inscribe the talisman array, Li Mani finally succeeded in using the soul-dispersing technique. She looked up to the sky and cried out in pain. The soul power in her body surged wildly and bombarded Qin Chuan. Soul dispersing. The gray soul power touched the Thunder Shield and quickly melted like snow. However, the Thunder Shield also melted together with the soul power. The 2 forces rubbed against each other and consumed each other's strength. In the blink of an eye, the thick Thunder Shield became a lot weaker, and Li Mani's body gradually became illusory. Boom! Accompanied by a burst of explosion, the Thunder Shield protecting Qin Chuan shattered. Su Chuan, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately turned into a cloud of smoke and shot toward Qin Chuan, who was exposed. Puchi! The green smoke penetrated Qin Chuan's body, causing a huge wound to appear on Qin Chuan's chest. In the blink of an eye, the wound rotted and flowed with thick black blood that emitted a foul smell. It was extremely terrifying. Not far away, the illusory Li Mani couldn't help but laugh when she saw this scene. She said to Qin Chuan very happily, Qin Chuan, when you kill my sister, did you think that you would have a day like this? Ha ha ha, heaven's reincarnation. This time, I will definitely destroy your soul. Whoosh. Su Chuan's figure quickly appeared by Li Mani's side. He transferred his soul power to Li Mani's body and helped her stabilize her body. She didn't shake so much that it seemed like she would collapse at any time. Ninth sister, Qin Chuan is definitely going to die. I will bring you back to Yin Mountain now and ask Father to place you in the Yin Pond. Hearing Su Chuan's words, Li Mani's face couldn't help but show a touch of gratitude. She was about to say something to Su Chuan when her face suddenly became extremely frightened. She shouted, Su Chuan, behind you. Before Li Mani's warning, Su Chuan's heart had already felt a sense of crisis. When he turned around, a terrifying bolt of lightning brazenly struck his body. The violent power surged and instantly exploded. Chapter 528. Hit by the power of thunder, Su Chuan couldn't help but scream. His expression became extremely ferocious. Li Mani, who was beside him, was not affected much because most of the power of thunder had been blocked by Su Chuan. She just looked at Qin Chuan in horror and despair, unable to accept this fact. When the power of thunder dissipated, Su Chuan fell to the ground in an extremely sorry state. He panted violently, his face full of horror. He looked at Qin Chuan with an extremely horrified expression. Why aren't you dead? Your chest. Su Chuan looked at Qin Chuan's bare chest in disbelief. He clearly remembered that he had penetrated Qin Chuan's chest. Qin Chuan should have died. Facing Su Chuan's shocked expression, Qin Chuan grinned and said, I forgot to tell you, I am immortal. Su Chuan didn't believe that Qin Chuan was immortal. However, Qin Chuan's chest had recovered as if nothing had happened. It was hard for him to doubt Qin Chuan's words. If Qin Chuan was really immortal, then what was the point of spending so much effort to ambush Qin Chuan? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Li Mani was like a madwoman. Her eyes were extremely ferocious as she stared at Qin Chuan. She couldn't wait to kill Qin Chuan with her eyes. She didn't believe that Qin Chuan was immortal. She must kill Qin Chuan. Li Mani's soul, which had been stabilized with great difficulty, showed signs of collapse because of this madness. At this time, Su Chuan, who was seriously injured, no longer had the mind to care about Li Mani. He wanted to find a chance to escape. However, when he thought about how he, a dignified golden core stage cultivator, had to run away pathetically from a foundation establishment stage cultivator, Su Chuan felt extremely sullen. However, if he didn't run away, there was a high probability that his soul would scatter and disappear from this world forever. As if seeing through Su Chuan's thoughts, Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Su Chuan, "Didn't you guys set up an inescapable net? Don't tell me it's just the two of you? If that's the case, then I won't hold back." As he spoke, Qin Chuan condensed a sharp lightning blade in his hand. He slowly walked towards Su Chuan. Seeing that Qin Chuan wanted to kill him, Su Chuan's face suddenly turned crazy. He said angrily, "You forced me to do this." In the midst of his angry roar, Su Chuan took out a bronze token from his storage ring and fiercely crushed it. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "Respectfully, Lord Yinshan." Qin Chuan, who was slowly walking forward, heard Su Chuan's angry roar, and his face immediately changed. At the same time, an extremely powerful aura descended on the restriction and directly broke through it. A terrifying pressure filled the entire world. At this moment, Qin Chuan felt that his body was as heavy as lead. There was no way for him to move at all. "Father, kill him." Su Chuan, who had fallen to the ground, shouted loudly towards the imposing figure in the sky. As Su Chuan's voice fell, a huge hand suddenly appeared in the sky and slowly slapped towards Qin Chuan. The speed of the hand was extremely slow, but it made Qin Chuan feel like he had to dodge countless times. He even felt his whole body tremble. That was a complete suppression from the level of life to the level of cultivation. Roar! Just as the hand was about to fall on Qin Chuan's head and smash Qin Chuan into pieces, an earth-shattering roar suddenly came from afar. A majestic figure came from afar and almost instantly crossed the distance of hundreds of miles and appeared in front of Qin Chuan, blocking the huge hand for Qin Chuan. The person who blocked the attack for Qin Chuan was none other than Lion Baron, who had rushed over from the mountain city. Under Lion Baron's protection, Qin Chuan's body could finally move freely. He retreated 2 steps back and looked up at the gloomy sky. His face was full of horror. If Lion Baron hadn't arrived in time, he would have been a dead man by now. The late stage of the Foundation Establishment stage could still fight against the early stage of the Golden Core stage, but against the nascent Soul stage Yinshan, he was no different from an ant. "It's actually you." Above the sky, a cold voice came, revealing 3 parts coldness and 7 parts indifference. "Mountain Lord Yinshan, you'd better retreat. I don't want to fight with you." Lion Baron sneered. If possible, he really didn't want to fight with Mountain Lord Yinshan. After a moment of silence, the dark clouds in the sky gradually dissipated, and the sky became clear again. Seeing this scene, Lion Baron breathed a sigh of relief, turned to Qin Chuan, and said, "Mountain Lord Yinshan is gone. The crisis is temporarily resolved." Hearing Lion Baron's words, Qin Chuan also breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Lion Baron with lingering fear and said, "If you hadn't arrived in time, I might have been dead." Lion Baron heard this and laughed. "I didn't expect those 2 little guys to be so smart. They actually used Mountain Lord Yinshan's shadow shifting technique to forcibly transfer you here. Before, there was a seal covering you, so I couldn't find you. Later, Mountain Lord Yinshan came and broke through the seal, so I found you in time and rushed over." While speaking, Lion Baron turned his head to look at Li Mani, who was lying on the ground and was about to collapse, and said to Qin Chuan, "I didn't expect you to be able to fight against 2 people by yourself and almost kill them. The main thing is that the power of thunder is too effective against ghost cultivators." Looking at Li Mani lying on the ground, Qin Chuan couldn't help but sigh softly, and he didn't know what to say. When Mountain Lord Yinshan left, he only took Su Chuan with him. He didn't take her with him. He must have abandoned her. What do you plan to do with her? Lion Baron looked at Li Mani, who was about to collapse, and said to Qin Chuan, "She seems to hate you very much. She's already like this, but the way she looks at you is still as fierce as ever. Even if I die, I will curse you to die a horrible death. Everyone around you will die because of you." Li Mani seemed to have exhausted the last of her strength to say the most vicious words to Qin Chuan. Then, she looked up at the sky, and her eyes gradually became unfocused. "Sister, I'm sorry." Whoosh! A breeze blew, and Li Mani's soul, which was on the verge of collapse, instantly turned into nothingness and dissipated between heaven and earth. From then on, Li Mani was no longer in this world. Qin Chuan didn't sympathize with Li Mani's fate. He just felt that a pitiful person must have a hateful side. In his eyes, it wasn't he who killed Li Mani, but the obsession and hatred in her heart that killed him. Back then, because Li Mani coveted the golden-haired monkey's son, she was hunted down and killed by the golden-haired monkey. It had nothing to do with him, but she wanted to forcefully implicate him. After that, when he wanted to leave Xiang City, Li Man forcefully chased after him without mercy. If it wasn't for the power of the runic sword, the one who died in the end would be him. He wanted to live, so those who wanted to kill him had to die. Chapter 529. The confrontation between Een Mountain Lord and Lion Duke was very short, but the terrifying aura shocked the entire mountain city. There were nascent soul practitioners fighting outside the mountain city. Although the process was very short, no one other than nascent soul practitioners would have such a terrifying aura. These two people, Zhong Qiyu looked outside the city with a dignified expression and said to Uncle Zhong beside her, "One of them should be Een Mountain Lord." As a nascent soul practitioner who had been famous for a long time, Een Mountain Lord had a great reputation in the World Mountain. His aura was not unfamiliar to everyone, because no nascent soul practitioner's aura would be as cold as Een Mountain Lord's. As for the other one, Zhong Qiyu felt familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen him before. It is indeed Een Mountain Lord. Uncle Zhong looked outside the city with a subtle expression and said to Zhong Qiyu, "As for the other person, we have seen him before." Zhong Qiyu looked at Uncle Zhong with some confusion and asked, "Who?" Uncle Zhong pursed his lips and said, "Lion King of the Lion Tribe." Hearing Uncle Zhong's words, Zhong Qiyu couldn't help but be stunned and said with some disbelief, "Lion Duke?" "Yes, Lion Duke." Uncle Zhong nodded. "I can't be wrong about his aura." Speaking of this, Uncle Zhong couldn't help but sigh. "I thought that Lion Duke's foundation was damaged and his realm fell, and he would never have the chance to enter the Demon King realm again in this life. I didn't expect to feel his aura again today. Not only did he return to the Demon King realm, but he is even stronger than before. He really is Lion Duke." Zhong Qiyu felt that this aura was very familiar, but she couldn't remember who it was for a while. Hearing Uncle Zhong's reminder, she immediately recalled that this aura belonged to the most powerful Lion King in the history of the Lion Tribe. But why did Lion Duke have a conflict with Een Mountain Lord? Zhong Qiyu was a little puzzled. Een Mountain Lord hasn't left Een Mountain for over 100 years. Could it be related to Qin Chuan that he suddenly appeared outside the city in the mountain? Qin Chuan had said that everyone in Een Mountain, aside from Een Mountain Master, was trash. He would have angered the entire Een Mountain, and Een Mountain Master was one of them. But with Een Mountain Master's status, he wouldn't have come out just because of a junior. And yet, Een Mountain Master's presence had appeared outside Mountain City. Aside from Qin Chuan, what else could have attracted Een Mountain Master's attention? "Madam, we only need to know one thing to know who Lord Een Shan is after." Uncle Zhong looked at Zhong Qiyu with a subtle look and said in a low voice, "We just need to confirm whether the person beside Qin Chuan is Lion Duke or not, and the answer will be clear." Hearing Uncle Zhong's words, Zhong Qiyu's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of astonishment. "You are the weirdest person I've ever met." Lion Duke sat on the ground with a weed in his mouth. He looked at Qin Chuan with a speechless look. "Qin Chuan, who was piling up dirt, asked, "What's weird about me?" "You're not weird, are you?" Lion Duke rolled his eyes. "Your enemy is dead, and you're making a grave for her. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she was your relative." Qin Chuan chuckled and replied, "Death is the most important thing. At the end of the day, she was a pitiful person. Since she's already dead, I can't possibly go against her." As he spoke, Qin Chuan had already finished building the grave. He clapped his hands and looked at the grave in front of him. He said in a low voice, "Your soul has already dissipated, so I can only build a cenotaph for you. I hope that in your next life." "Sorry, I forgot that you don't have a next life." Lion Duke, who was sitting on the side, heard Qin Chuan and couldn't help but complain. "You are such a bad person." Qin Chuan walked in front of Lion Duke and said, "You saved my life. Today I'll use up one chance." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lion Duke had a playful look on his face. He asked, "Are you sure this counts?" "I don't have a problem with it." "I don't have a problem with it, either. You did save my life, and my life is very valuable." Qin Chuan had always been a reasonable person. Lion Duke and Yin Shanjun didn't fight today, but Lion Duke did save him from Yin Shanjun. If Lion Duke hadn't arrived in time, he would have been a dead man. So, no matter what, he used up one chance to ask Lion Duke for help. "Good boy. I like your temper." Lion Duke laughed, then reached out his hand and hooked Qin Chuan's shoulder. "Big cousin, I won't take advantage of you. Tonight, let's go to the biggest restaurant in Mountain City to eat my treat." Qin Chuan made a wry smile and said, "The biggest restaurant in Mountain City is Mountain Banquet House. I already have a shadow in my heart. Let's go to another restaurant." Hearing Qin Chuan, Lion Duke laughed again. "Qin Chuan." Just when Qin Chuan and Lion Duke were preparing to return to Mountain City, suddenly two figures quickly rushed over from a distant place. Qin Chuan thought that it was another enemy, but when he looked carefully, he discovered that it was Yao Rao and Ma Jiaowen. Yao Rao rushed to the side of Qin Chuan and worriedly asked Qin Chuan, "Are you okay?" Qin Chuan looked at Yao Rao with puzzled expression and asked, "How did you know I was here?" Yao Rao replied, "Did you forget what I told you before? The closer we are, the stronger the sense is, plus you took the pill I gave you, so I guess that you must have had an accident, so I rushed over." Hearing Yao Rao, Qin Chuan's face revealed a touch of understanding, then said to Yao Rao with a smile, "The matter is already over. I really have to thank you for the pill you gave me, otherwise today I might really be in trouble." Before, because of the matter of offending Yin Shan, Yao Rao had sent a mail to Qin Chuan to help him withstand the pressure from Yin Shan. At that time, Qin Chuan refused Yao Rao's good intentions. Later, Yao Rao made Ma Jiaowen give Qin Chuan a pill that could rapidly recover injuries that Qin Chuan had eaten in Unfettered Secret Realm. This time, Qin Chuan didn't refuse Yao Rao's good intentions and accepted the pill. Just a moment ago, Qin Chuan's chest was pierced by Su Chuan. If not for him immediately taking that pill, then he ought to have died at that time. So Qin Chuan was really grateful to Yao Rao. "It's good that you know how to thank this queen." Hearing Qin Chuan's gratitude, Yao Rao's face couldn't help but reveal a happy smile. "As long as you treat this queen well, you can have as much phoenix blood as you want." "Phoenix blood? You're quite willing to invest in Qin Chuan, aren't you?" Hearing the name Phoenix Blood, Lion Baron standing at one side suddenly revealed a touch of pondering expression. Then looking at Qin Chuan and Yao Rao, his expression became extremely ambiguous. Chapter 530. "Who are you?" Yao Rao confusedly looked at Lion Count. She felt that Lion Count was somewhat familiar, as if she had seen him somewhere before. Guess who I am?" Lion Count smiled. "When you were still an egg, I had hugged you." Hearing Lion Count, Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. It was really hard for him to imagine the appearance of Lion Count hugging an egg. "Who are you calling an egg?" Yao Rao anxiously said, "You are an egg. Your whole family are eggs." Just when Yao Rao was about to continue to reason with Lion Count, Ma Jiaowen stepped forward and pulled Yao Rao's sleeve, then pulled Yao Rao to her side. Yao Rao looked back at Ma Jiaowen and asked with puzzled expression, What are you doing? Ma Jiawen looked at Yao Rao with extremely solemn expression, then looked at Lion Count and respectfully asked, "May I ask if Senior is the former Lion King of Lion Tribe?" Senior Lion Count? Hearing Ma Jiawen's words, Yao Rao couldn't help but open her eyes wide, then suddenly turned to look at Lion Count and involuntarily said, "You are Lion Count?" Lion Count chuckled and looked at Ma Jiawen, then again looked at Yao Rao. Seeing the shocked expression on Yao Rao's face, he said with a smile, "What's wrong? Did that old fellow Yao Feng teach you like this since childhood? You directly call Senior by his name? Compared to the little fellow of Heavenly Horse Tribe, you, this princess, are really far behind." Having heard what was said, Ma Jiawen immediately said to Lion Count, "Princess Yao Rao is innately intelligent. I can't compare to her. Senior is overpraising. Senior, please don't blame me. It is this princess. This junior has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai." At this time, Yao Rao also reacted and quickly apologized to Lion Count. Although she was a princess, but in front of Demon King, she was only a junior. Okay, I don't mean to blame you. You little girl have always been straightforward and don't have any thoughts. Lion Count chuckled, then said to everyone, "Let's not chat here. Let's go back first." Before, a battle between Yuanying realm experts had broken out here. So after the battle, there were bound to be curious people coming to investigate. If they continued to stay here, they would inevitably be discovered. Although they were not afraid, but it would cause some unnecessary trouble, so it was better to leave early. On the way back to the mountain city, Yao Rao pulled Qin Chuan to one side, then asked in low voice, "Why are you with him? Also, how did he recover his realm?" Although Yao Rao hadn't seen Lion Count for a long time, but she had heard about the matters of Lion Count. She knew that Lion Count was once a demon king with very high status in demon race. Later, because of a battle, his foundation was damaged and his realm fell. Then he was driven out of Lion Tribe and disappeared without a trace. The last time he appeared was when he followed Mouse Clan to Elf City of Star Dragon Federation. Then he disappeared again. She thought that Lion Count had already died because of his injuries, but she didn't expect to see Lion Count again today. Moreover, he had also returned to Demon King Realm. Hearing Yao Rao, Qin Chuan faintly smiled. "This matter is a long story. If you know me, then you should know that at that time in Elf City, I was taken away by Senior. We knew each other from that time, and after meeting several times, we became familiar with each other. Because I didn't know the way to Demon Realm, I asked Senior to escort me, then we came here." After hearing Qin Chuan, Yao Rao said with some surprise, "You two actually knew each other from that time? You as a human actually dared to deal with Demon Race's Demon King. Your courage is really big." Having heard Yao Rao, Qin Chuan chuckled. "If my courage was not big enough, then I wouldn't have planned to go to your Heavenly Demon Mountain as a guest." Mentioning the matter of going to Heavenly Demon Mountain as a guest, Yao Rao suddenly asked Qin Chuan, "Then before, did you miss me?" Finished speaking, Yao Rao felt it was inappropriate. So she promptly explained, "I mean, because you took Phoenix blood, so, well, no need to explain." Qin Chuan chuckled, then interrupted Yao Rao. He looked at Yao Rao's bashful appearance, then teased, "Do you want to know whether I missed you or not?" Having heard what was said, Yao Rao immediately turned her head, then snorted and said, "No, Buzz." At this time, Qin Chuan's optical computer suddenly lit up. He opened it and took a glance, then said with a smile, "Wow, Super Big Beauty sent me mail." "Who?" Yao Rao immediately turned her head, then wanted to open Qin Chuan's optical computer. "Who sent you mail? Let me see. What are you looking at?" Qin Chuan looked at Yao Rao with a smile and asked, "Are you jealous? Don't tell me you really like me." "Qin Chuan," Yao Rao angrily said, "you are really too hateful." Seeing Yao Rao gnashing her teeth, Qin Chuan decided not to tease her, then seriously said, "Just now I was joking. The person who sent me mail is my teacher." Finished speaking, Qin Chuan turned his optical computer towards Yao Rao, letting Yao Rao see the content of the mail, and sure enough the sender was Ningya. "I don't want to see it." Although Yao Rao said she didn't want to see it, but her eyes were very honest as she read the content of the mail without missing a word. After she finished reading, she somewhat asked in surprise, "Your teacher actually came to World Mountain?" Qin Chuan nodded his head. Maybe because she heard about the matter of before, teacher is somewhat worried about my safety, so she especially hurried over to see me. Your teacher is actually very concerned about you. Yao Rao shot a glance at Qin Chuan and said, "Wait until your teacher comes. I will arrange it. Then we can have a meal together and get to know each other. I am actually very curious what kind of teacher can teach a student like you." Hearing Yao Rao, Qin Chuan almost couldn't hold back and wanted to tease Yao Rao again whether she wanted to meet his parents or not, but after thinking about it, he finally gave up. He was afraid that if he provoked Yao Rao again, he would be in deep trouble. "Why don't you speak? What? You don't want to?" Yao Rao cast a sidelong glance at Qin Chuan. Her eyes were filled with threatening intention. "It's not that I don't want to, but we don't need to wait, I think, tonight." Qin Chuan chuckled and pointed at the tall woman who had appeared at the roadside, then said to Yao Rao, "Let me introduce you. This is the most famous person of Black Moon Combat Academy. Beautiful voice, sweet, cute, and charming forever, 18 years old teacher Ning Yanning." Hearing Qin Chuan, Yao Rao subconsciously looked at the charming woman wearing black Chong Sam, standing not far away, and with a surprised expression, she said, "So this is your teacher, so young and beautiful." "Which cultivator isn't young?" Qin Chuan grinned. "Which one of you girls doesn't have the ability to retain your youthful looks?" "Smelly brat. I didn't come all the way to World Mountain to listen to you ridicule me." Ning Yanning looked at Qin Chuan, who was walking in front of her. Then, after sizing up Qin Chuan, she turned her gaze towards Yao Rao, who was walking beside Qin Chuan, then asked with a smile, "You're Princess Rao of Demon Clan?" Chapter 531. Facing Ningya's inquiry, Yao Rao immediately replied, "Junior greets teacher Ning. You can call me by my name, Yao Rao." Seeing Yao Rao was so clever and sensible, Ningya somewhat sighed with emotion and said, "I really didn't expect that rumored proud and aloof Princess Yao Rao is actually so clever and lovely in reality. Perhaps we are fated to meet each other. I especially like you since the first time we met." Having heard Ningya, Yao Rao immediately replied, "I also like teacher Ning very much. This is the first time I have seen teacher Ning with such temperament and beautiful girl." Ha ha ha. Being praised by a young and beautiful girl always makes people incomparably happy. Ningya covered her mouth and smiled. "You are also very beautiful, more beautiful than I had imagined." Qin Chuan, who was standing at the side, couldn't listen anymore. These two people flattered each other endlessly. Could it be that they didn't feel tired of it? "You two, Qin Chuan, teacher is talking. Do you have the right to interrupt?" Ningya looked at Qin Chuan with a smile. "Do you understand the meaning of respect for teacher?" "Qin Chuan, it's not that I want to criticize you, but can't you be a little sensible?" Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan, then sighed and said, "You are not young anymore. How come you don't have a little bit of eyesight?" I was wrong. Qin Chuan quickly raised his hand to express his surrender. "You two continue to chat. I will absolutely not disturb." Seeing Qin Chuan admit his mistake and admit defeat, Ningya and Yao Rao looked at each other, then laughed and continued to chat. Qin Chuan speechlessly walked to the side of Lion Ju, then asked, "Big cousin, have you ever had a girlfriend?" Hearing Qin Chuan's question, Lion Ju snappily glared at Qin Chuan and said, "Get lost." Qin Chuan mischievously smiled, but didn't get lost and continued to ask, "Have you ever had a girlfriend? You have lived for at least hundreds of years, right? You can't possibly cultivate wholeheartedly and never have your heart moved." Lion Duke glanced at Qin Chuan and said, "I'm not like you. The environment I live in is far worse and more dangerous than you can imagine. I can't trust anyone but myself. That's why I never look for women." "What about your parents?" Qin Chuan was curious. "Can't they be trusted?" Lion Lord was silent for a moment, and then he said to Qin Chuan, "It is because they trusted others that they died so miserably. That is why I do not trust anyone." After hearing Lion Duke's answer, Qin Chuan said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up your sad past. It doesn't matter. It's been so many years. I've already let it go." Lion Duke smiled calmly. "You are a very special person, kid. If someone else had asked me this question, they might have been answered with a majestic lion claw. Qin Chuan knew that Lion Duke was telling the truth. He pursed his lips and said, "Big cousin, we are quite similar. My parents have passed away, too. I'm even worse than you. I don't even know how they died. I know who my enemy is, but I don't even have the qualifications to stand in front of him. I want revenge, so I want more power, more power, more power." Lion Duke didn't know much about Qin Chuan's past. When he heard Qin Chuan's story, he patted Qin Chuan's shoulder and said to Qin Chuan, "Your life is a bit pitiful, but without it, you wouldn't have achieved what you have today. Actually, I'd rather be an ordinary person with a happy family." Qin Chuan smiled and said, "At least I don't have to work so hard. Even if I die, I'll die. I won't have any regrets." "Don't talk about it. It will affect your state of mind." Lion Duke looked at Qin Chuan seriously and said, "As a cultivator, you must remember that there are some things you can't say. You can't even think about it." Qin Chuan nodded and remembered what Lion Duke said. He knew that Lion Duke said this out of good intentions. As a cultivator, in addition to cultivating the body, one must cultivate the mind. Cultivating the mind was especially important. Only by calming the mind would one not encounter heart demons when breaking through bottlenecks. Looking at it now, Qin Chuan might not be affected, but when he advanced to the gold core stage in the future, what he thought and said today might become a heart demon that would bother him. If he could overcome the heart demon, then it would be fine. If he couldn't overcome the heart demon, then he was afraid that he would never reach the gold core stage in his life. When Qin Chuan and the others returned to the mountain city, they could hear people everywhere discussing the nascent soul stage battle that happened not long ago. Some people even described it vividly, as if they had seen it with their own eyes. They simply described the nascent soul stage cultivators as omnipotent gods and devils, which was extremely exaggerated. After returning to the hotel, Ningya stopped chatting with Yaorao and called Qin Chuan to her room alone. Ningya looked at Qin Chuan, who was sitting in front of her, and said, "Who told you to sit? Go stand aside." Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan helplessly stood up and walked to the side. Then he said to Ningya, "Master, what did I do wrong? Do you think your wings have grown? You dare to make friends with anyone?" Ningya looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "Does it feel good to call a great beast your brother?" "Master, big cousin and I, Lion Duke and I are friends. He won't harm me." Qin Chuan seriously said to Ningya, "If he wanted to harm me, I definitely wouldn't be alive now." Qin Chuan was telling the truth. If Lion Duke wanted to kill him, he should have died after meeting Azure Dragon Song Hao. "Humph, you're lucky." Ningya coldly snorted, "Sit down and talk." Hearing Ningya telling him to sit down, Qin Chuan knew that Ningya's anger had subsided. He immediately smiled and said to Ningya, "Master, I know you're thinking about me and are worried about me. I know what I'm doing, so you can rest assured." "Then what's the matter with Yaorao?" Ningya stared at Qin Chuan and said, "There are so many beautiful girls in our Star Dragon Federation who like you, but you don't want any of them. Why do you want to be together with the princess of Demon Race? Do you know what you'll face if you two get together?" Facing Ningya's question, Qin Chuan became silent. He naturally knew what he would have to face if he and Yaorao walked together. And it was precisely because he clearly knew all of this that he hadn't made any preparations until now and hadn't broken the final window paper. Seeing Qin Chuan was silent, Ningya let out a long sigh. Then she earnestly said to Qin Chuan, "Master, I've been through this before. I know that once you fall in love with someone, it's very difficult to turn back. It's very difficult to forget. So today I won't advise you to let go of the feelings in your heart. I won't make you make any difficult choice. I just want to tell you that before you have the ability to bear everything, don't do something that will make you regret." Chapter 532. After a moment of silence, Qin Chuan seriously looked at Ningya and said to Ningya, "Master, if a cultivator wants to cultivate their heart, they have to face their own heart and understand what they really want. I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm going to face. I'm ready." Hearing Qin Chuan's answer, Ningya looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated look in her eyes. She sighed faintly and said to Qin Chuan, "You and your mother are exactly the same. Both of you have a stubborn temper. Once you have decided on something, even 8 oxen can't pull you back. But this is also good. It saves me from worrying about you." Qin Chuan heard this and said to Ningya with some guilt, "Master, I am sorry. I made you worry too much." "You're wrong. I'm worrying too much." Ningya smiled slightly and looked at Qin Chuan with gentle eyes and said, "You are already an adult. You have your own judgment and the ability to make your own choices. I shouldn't have said so much to you. Now what I should do is to quietly watch you grow to a higher level. At that time, Master will be proud of you." Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan's eyes couldn't help but moisten. Since he was a child, he had never felt what was called a father's love and what was called a mother's love. Now under the care of Ningya, he experienced the feeling of being cared for and cared for. "Master, I will definitely become your pride." Qin Chuan looked at Ningya with firm eyes. "I swear." The popularity of the Yuanying stage cultivator was still high in the mountain city. Very few people mentioned the one-on-one duel in the arena. Until today's duel was about to start, everyone finally remembered this matter after seeing the advertisement of the arena. They bought tickets to enter the arena to watch the duel. Qin Chuan was resting in the box prepared for him in the arena, as usual. The person beside him was still the Lion Duke. As for Ningya, she was in the box of the enchanting woman, chatting with her. "Big cousin, after today's duel, we can set off for Mount Tianyao." Qin Chuan exhaled and said to the Lion Duke, "My training can be over." After going through the previous series of battles, in addition to the life and death battle yesterday, Qin Chuan had completely solidified his foundation. Without any worries, there was no point in continuing to participate in this 1 against 1,000 challenge. However, because the arena had already released the news, he would withdraw from the competition after this round. "Indeed, you can withdraw." The Lion Duke chuckled. "Kid's growth is faster than I thought. Of course, it is more twists and turns." Qin Chuan had only been in the World Mountain for more than half a month, and he had already attracted the attention of Yin Mountain Lord, a Yuanying stage cultivator who had not appeared for hundreds of years. Ordinary people absolutely did not have the ability to attract hatred. With the speed of your progress, it won't be long before you condense a golden core and pass the first heavenly tribulation in your life. How about it? Are you looking forward to it? The Lion Duke looked at Qin Chuan with playful eyes, but you are a cultivator with thunder attribute after all. You shouldn't be afraid of the thunder tribulation. Qin Chuan smiled when he heard the words. "Of course I'm looking forward to it. I even have the impulse to take a bath in the heavenly tribulation." "Okay, don't talk nonsense. Go ahead." The Lion Duke glanced at the direction of the door and said to Qin Chuan, "By the way, invite the old guy at the door in for me." Qin Chuan looked at the direction of the door with some surprise, then got up and walked to the door. He opened the door and looked at the white-haired old man standing at the door and asked curiously, "Who are you looking for?" The old man looked at Qin Chuan calmly and whispered, "I'm looking for the Demon King, the Lion Duke." When Qin Chuan heard the old man's words, he stepped aside and said, "Please come in." The old man thanked Qin Chuan and then walked in. Qin Chuan closed the door and walked toward the arena. In the box, the Lion Duke looked at the person who walked in and laughed. "Zhong Cheng, you old man are still alive." The person called Zhong Cheng was naturally Uncle Zhong, the calm and amiable old butler next to Zhong Chuyu. At this time, facing the Demon King, Lion Duke, he was neither servile nor overbearing. He even faintly felt like he was on par with the Lion Duke. "You're still alive. There's no reason for me to die." Zhong Cheng slowly walked to the sofa and sat down. "I'm surprised that you're hanging out with a little human. You don't understand. This is called experiencing the life of a young person." The Lion Duke narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Zhong Cheng, then asked, "You didn't send the people who have been monitoring us before, did you?" "That was the madam's idea. She was worried about Qin Chuan's safety, so she sent people to protect Qin Chuan." Zhong Cheng responded faintly, "But with you here, it's unnecessary for us to send people over." Madam? The Lion Duke was a little confused. Which madam? My master's sister. Zhong Cheng replied. You might have some impression. She pulled your beard when she was young, and you gave her 3 whiskers as a souvenir. Hearing Zhong Cheng's words, the Lion Duke's face suddenly showed a look of realization and said to Zhong Cheng, So, it's that little girl. I remember now, but I didn't expect you to be so loyal to the Zhong family. Even now, you're still guarding the Zhong family. Zhong Cheng pursed his lips and said, If it weren't for my master saving my life and helping me with my cultivation, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. In this life, I will never leave the Zhong family. I will always guard the Zhong family until I'm the only one left. I admire you. I really admire you. The Lion Duke praised. You humans are all heartless and unjust. It's rare to see someone with a heart like yours. But then again, why does that little girl care so much about Qin Chuan? The Lion Duke was a little confused, and he asked, What is her relationship with Qin Chuan? Zhong Cheng was silent for a while, then replied, The madam has nothing to do with Qin Chuan. She has something to do with Qin Chuan's father. Ha ha, I understand. Lion Duke had a knowing look on his face. It seems like Qin Chuan has inherited his father's traits. He has to be merciful wherever he goes. He's not easy to deal with. Well, since I'm sure it's you, then I'm relieved. Zhong Cheng stood up and said to the Lion Duke, Let's go. The Lion Duke saw Zhong Cheng getting up and leaving. So he asked, You're leaving? There aren't many old friends left. Don't you want to chat a little longer? I'm going back to accompany the madam to watch the game. I'm not interested in chatting with you. Zhong Cheng looked at the Lion Duke and said, About my identity, don't tell Qin Chuan. Well. The Lion Duke waved his hand at Zhong Cheng and suddenly asked, You're so attentive to that little girl. Do you like her? Boom. Zhong Cheng's aura surged toward the Lion Duke, and the Lion Duke's face changed instantly. If you want to test my depth, you don't have to make such a boring joke. I'll satisfy you. Zhong Cheng looked at the Lion Duke deeply, then turned and left. Chapter 533. The spectator seats in the arena were still full. Everyone was looking forward to the start of the duel. Before this, they had already emptied their wallets and bet on the side they favored. Naturally, most of the spectators favored Qin Chuan. After all, Qin Chuan's previous performance was obvious to everyone. The amazing record of killing 10 opponents in 1 strike was not something that anyone could do. Of course, the spectators did not know that Qin Chuan only had 1 chance. If they knew this, the spectators might think more carefully before placing their bets. Qin Chuan walked through the corridor as usual and came to the arena. When he appeared, the spectators immediately cheered as if they had seen a lot of money fly into their pockets. At the same time, the other 50 cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm also began to enter the arena. Each of them had a serious expression on their faces. Obviously, they did not want to lose. As cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm, each of them had their own pride in their hearts. Facing Qin Chuan, who was a small realm lower than them, if they could not win, it would be really embarrassing. Qin Chuan looked at the 50 cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm who entered the arena one after another. He could not help but feel a little emotional. This kind of scene was actually quite spectacular. When he thought of fighting against 50 cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm, he felt a little excited. Qin Chuan, you can't win today. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about these things, a young man suddenly stood out from the crowd opposite him, his face full of arrogance. Qin Chuan looked at the young man's proud and confident face and asked doubtfully, You are? I'm the one who is going to end your winning streak and defeat you. Remember my name? I'm Yi Han. The young man's face was full of confidence. I will inherit your will and become an invincible man in the Foundation establishment realm. Hearing Yi Han's words, Qin Chuan's face could not help but reveal an extremely strange expression. He could not help but say, I'm not dead yet. I don't need you to inherit my will. This Yi Han looked to be around 20 years old, about the same age as him, but his brain didn't seem to be working too well. No matter how he looked at it, he seemed to be Chinibu. Qin Chuan wasn't the only one who felt that Yi Han's brain wasn't working well. Even the people standing beside Yi Han subconsciously distanced themselves from Yi Han. They felt that Yi Han didn't use his brain at all when he spoke. If he wanted to act pretentious, he should have waited until he won the duel. If he acted pretentious now, wouldn't it be a slap in the face if he lost? However, when Yi Han saw that the others had distanced themselves from him, he did not feel that it was his fault. Instead, he sighed and said, "It's lonely at the top. The strong are always lonely." Qin Chuan, everyone, not only did Qin Chuan and the other contestants feel a little embarrassed, the audience were all amused by Yi Han. They also did not understand where Yi Han's confidence came from. Without the 49 people around him, was he even qualified to fight with Qin Chuan? Woo woo woo. Just when everyone was extremely amused by Yi Han's performance, the horn that signaled the start of the duel finally sounded. The atmosphere at the scene suddenly became tense and serious. Under everyone's gaze, Qin Chuan slowly took out a long sword from his storage ring, then a second, a third. Everyone looked at Qin Chuan's movements with some astonishment. No one expected that Qin Chuan would actually take out a total of 10 long swords and carry them on his back. He looked like a peacock spreading its tail. In the box, Su Miao saw Qin Chuan's movements and asked curiously, "What is he doing?" Su Kuang shook his head and said, "I don't know. I guess he wants to practice his swordsmanship in actual combat. To be honest, he looks down on his opponent too much." Su Kuang admitted that Qin Chuan's strength was very strong, but at this time, he was not facing one foundation establishment perfection stage, but a total of 50 foundation establishment perfection stage cultivators. He was so confident to practice his swordsmanship with 50 strong opponents. Either he had real skills or he was too arrogant. Although Qin Chuan did have some real skills, Su Kuang still felt that Qin Chuan was very arrogant. Perhaps this time, Qin Chuan would suffer a loss. On the other side, Zhong Cheng also returned to the box at this time. Zhong Qiyu, who was watching the duel through the screen, turned her eyes to Zhong Cheng, who came in and asked, "Butler, do you know the identity of that person?" "Madam, I have confirmed that he is indeed Lion Duke." Zhong Cheng replied to Zhong Qiyu. Previously, Yin Shanjun came out to target Qin Chuan, but he was blocked by Lion Duke. Hearing Zhong Cheng's words, Zhong Qiyu's expression couldn't help but become subtle. She whispered, "I didn't expect it to really be him. It's really strange that he would follow Qin Chuan." "It is indeed strange," Zhong Cheng nodded. "He stayed by Qin Chuan's side. Perhaps he has some ulterior motives. I have investigated." Qin Chuan obtained a worm leg from Zerg's Archon in the Carefree Secret Realm. Many large forces in the Star Dragon Federation are eyeing Qin Chuan, wanting to get a share of the loot. Zhong Qiyu sighed. With Qin Chuan's current strength, it is indeed a sin to have such a treasure. Zhong Cheng said, "However, it is said that Qin Chuan left the Archon's worm leg in the Black Moon Combat Academy. It is now in the hands of Ning Zhongtian. It is basically impossible for those people to get a share of the loot from Ning Zhongtian's hands." Zhong Cheng admired Ning Zhongtian very much, but at the same time, he was also very wary of him. If he were to rank the current nascent soul cultivators, Ning Zhongtian would definitely be in the top 3. If he were to rank the people he was most unwilling to fight, Ning Zhongtian would definitely be in the first place. "I hope everything goes well for Qin Chuan." Zhong Qiyu sighed. "He can't stay in a mountain city forever. We can only take care of him in the mountain city. He still has to walk his own path in the future." Zhong Cheng originally wanted to say something, but at this moment, the sound of the horn stopped. The battle on the stage had begun. The moment the sound of the horn stopped, Qin Chuan, who was facing 50 perfect foundation establishment cultivators, advanced instead of retreating. With a sword in each hand, he brazenly charged into the crowd. Everyone felt that Qin Chuan's choice was extremely good. If Qin Chuan chose to retreat, he would definitely become a live target in everyone's eyes and be attacked by long-range attacks. However, if he charged into the crowd, then everyone would have to worry about their teammates while attacking Qin Chuan. In fact, there were only a few people who could come into contact with Qin Chuan. The situation could be said to be greatly advantageous to Qin Chuan. Yi Han, who had been clamoring to replace Qin Chuan, had disappeared without a trace and blended into the crowd. It seemed that he had no intention of attacking Qin Chuan. Chapter 534. The moment the battle broke out, Qin Chuan had already injured two opponents with the sharpness of his long sword. Qin Chuan had not been learning swordsmanship for a long time. Apart from the absolute sword that he received from the military, Qin Chuan only knew one swordsmanship, which was the basic swordsmanship. Stab/point lift. Qin Chuan executed each move as if he was following a script. He neutralized the attacks of the surrounding opponents and counterattacked at the same time. He tried his best to protect himself from harm. Rather than saying that his spiritual energy was being consumed on offense, it was more accurate to say that it was being consumed on defense. Originally, everyone was still worried that Qin Chuan would be too strong and too difficult to deal with. At this moment, they finally relaxed and heaved a huge sigh of relief. If Qin Chuan's strength was only at this level, then even if they had to exhaust him, they would still be able to exhaust him to death. Qin Chuan's opponents heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Qin Chuan's performance. However, those who had bet heavily on Qin Chuan began to worry. If Qin Chuan couldn't display his invincible might in the end, and if this situation continued, then they would definitely lose the duel. Shiyu had at least passed this level. Since Qin Chuan could defeat Shiyu, he should be able to pass this level. While everyone was worried about Qin Chuan's performance, Qin Chuan himself felt very good. When he did not use what he was good at, the gap between him and his opponents was infinitely narrowed, which made him feel great pressure. This not only had the effect of practicing swordsmanship, but also had the effect of unearthing his potential. It could be said that it was killing two birds with one stone. As for whether he would win or lose in the end, Qin Chuan didn't care. What he wanted was to increase his strength, not win. In the box, Ningyu was looking at Qin Chuan's performance. Her eyes were carefully distinguishing each of Qin Chuan's movements. She was carefully looking for the subtle mistakes that Qin Chuan had made in the battle. Qin Chuan's attainment in swordsmanship is still not good enough. His sword movements are not smooth enough. Although it can be seen that he has been improving and changing, but it is still not good enough. Ningyu said to Yao Rao, who was sitting beside her while watching the match, "This is only to deal with ordinary complete foundation establishment stage. If he encounters a genius of the same realm, then Qin Chuan's swordsmanship will be severely beaten." Hearing Ningyu's words, Yao Rao cutely stuck out her tongue and said in a low voice, "Actually, Qin Chuan is not as bad as you said, right? He has just started learning swordsmanship, so it is normal for his level to be low. I believe it will not be long before his swordsmanship will greatly improve. Give him a little more time." When Ma Jiawen, who was sitting beside Yao Rao, heard Yao Rao's gentle and lovable tone, the corner of her mouth slightly twitched. She was really not used to Yao Rao using this kind of tone to speak. Too terrible. Ningyu actually didn't feel that there was any problem with Yao Rao's tone, so she faintly smiled and said to Yao Rao, "What you said is right. Qin Chuan has always been growing, and compared to many of his peers, he is already more outstanding. It is me who is too strict with him." There were some words that Ningyu didn't say. She was strict with Qin Chuan because she also hoped that Qin Chuan could grow up as soon as possible. She was worried that someday in the future, Qin Chuan would encounter Shangguan Yuanhao, but he didn't have the strength to kill Shangguan Yuanhao. As far as Qin Chuan was concerned, that would be too cruel. If possible, Ningyu really hoped that this day would arrive a bit later, so as to give Qin Chuan a bit more time. Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan with sparkling eyes and said with approval, "Qin Chuan is indeed more outstanding than most of his peers, and there are very few people who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him. At least I haven't met anyone who is more outstanding than Qin Chuan." Hearing Yao Rao's words, Ma Jiawen's lips moved. She really wanted to remind Yao Rao that the heir of Tiger King clan was not inferior to Qin Chuan in all aspects, and was even stronger than him. So Yao Rao shouldn't neglect that heir of Tiger King clan. but she didn't say it out loud. She didn't want to make Yao Rao unhappy at this time. Looking at Yao Rao's serious appearance, Ningya's eyes couldn't help but flash with a touch of subtle color. She had seen all the girls around Qinchuan, and with the exception of Lu Zi, Yao Rao was the second girl who looked at Qinchuan with stars in her eyes. She also had that kind of eyes before. On the arena, the battle had already entered the white-hot stage. Because of Qinchuan's attack, the number of people who had lost their fighting strength and left the arena had already reached 20 people. And Qinchuan was also not in a good condition. At this time, his body was already covered with scars, and light golden blood was flowing out from them, which appeared extremely mystical. At this time, out of the 10 swords on Qinchuan's back, 4 of them had already been broken, and now the 2 swords in his hand were also damaged beyond repair, and were on the verge of breaking. One must know, the worst grade of these swords was low-grade magic weapon, but now they were broken one after another. The loss was really astonishing. Roar! A burst of roar resounded from Qinchuan's back, and a cultivator who was focused on cultivating his body suddenly swelled up, and like a huge black bear, he pounced towards Qinchuan and ferociously collided with Qinchuan. Qinchuan raised the sword his hand to block, but under this powerful impact, the long sword was immediately broken, and the huge body didn't reduce in the slightest as it collided with Qinchuan's body. The moment Qinchuan was fiercely sent flying, the surging spiritual power in the air changed into a huge black bear, and waving its huge claws, it ferociously slapped on Qinchuan's chest. Puff! Qinchuan immediately opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face suddenly turned pale, and with a plop, he fell into the arena, smashing a huge, deep pit in the arena. Seeing this scene, the audience's cheers suddenly stopped. Everyone looked at Qinchuan lying in the deep pit with extremely nervous eyes, hoping that Qinchuan could stand up and continue to fight, and not choose to surrender for the sake of survival. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, Qinchuan climbed up from the deep pit with some difficulty. He panted slightly and grinned at his numb opponents and said softly, "It's not enough, it's still far from enough. Go to hell." An angry roar sounded, and a swordsman took out a golden flying sword, which flew towards Qinchuan like a meteor. Seeing that it was about to stab Qinchuan, Qinchuan suddenly turned around, and the scabbard on his back blocked the sword that was almost certain to kill. At the same time, he took out 2 long swords again, turned around brazenly, and charged into the crowd again. When the crowd saw that Qinchuan had charged back again, their eyes turned red. They were not willing to become a supporting character for Qinchuan, and they wanted to fight back. Seeing this scene, the silent crowd was once again filled with cheers. Qinchuan had not fallen, and he was still writing his legend. Chapter 535. Kill. Amidst the angry roar, Qinchuan pierced the heart of the person in front of him with his sword. Then, he turned around and slashed his sword at the person on the left. At the same time, his back was also hit by someone. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Qinchuan turned around and wanted to fight back, but what greeted him was a strong fluctuation of spiritual energy. A pitch-black blade slashed towards him, and everything in its path was turned into nothingness. Qinchuan's pupils suddenly shrank, and he subconsciously wanted to dodge. However, he was surrounded by people on all sides. Everyone surrounded him and did not give him any space to dodge. Puchi! When the blade entered his body, Qinchuan's face immediately turned pale. He opened his mouth and spat out a large amount of blood. Then he fell back. At the same time, the others also attacked Qinchuan. Various spiritual energies appeared in the air and bombarded Qinchuan's body. Seeing this scene, the audience suddenly burst into exclamations. Under such a heavy attack, the possibility of Qinchuan surviving was almost zero. At this moment, the hundreds of thousands of people in the colossal arena fell into a state of silence. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at the situation in the arena. They wanted to see if Qinchuan, who had fallen into the deep pit, still had any chance of survival. In the arena, everyone surrounded the deep pit and looked at Qin Chuan, who was lying in the deep pit. The expressions in their eyes were very subtle. They were not sure whether Qin Chuan was dead or not, but looking at Qin Chuan's current appearance, even if he was not dead, he was not far from death. He should be dead, right? Someone asked with uncertainty. In the current situation, they did not know if they should continue to kill Qin Chuan. Their goal of winning had been achieved. If they continued to attack Qin Chuan, it would be too obvious that they wanted to strangle a genius in the cradle. The people behind Qin Chuan would definitely not let them off easily. He should be dead. In that situation, no one could hold back. Some people began to find excuses for killing Qin Chuan, while others began to look around, as if they wanted to see what others had to say. Qin Chuan defeated 26 of us just now. He did not kill us and only lost the ability to fight. If he wanted to, he could have killed all of them. Someone in the crowd whispered, and everyone suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at each other, and then looked at the ground of the arena in unison. Other than the traces of battle left on the ground, there were only bloodstains. There were indeed no corpses. Those who were injured and lost the ability to fight had already left the arena. Seeing this, the crowd's silence became even heavier. At this moment, another voice was heard. This is the arena where life and death are determined. Qin Chuan is being merciful to those people. What does it have to do with us? Has nothing to do with us. Dong, dong. Just as the crowd was discussing and shirking responsibility, a drum-like sound suddenly rang out in the arena, attracting everyone's attention. When the crowd found the source of the sound, their faces were filled with shock. The drum-like sound came from Qin Chuan, who had fallen into the deep pit. Seeing the violent beating of Qin Chuan's chest, the crowd immediately realized that it was Qin Chuan's heart beating. This meant that Qin Chuan was still alive. As time passed, the sound of the heartbeat became louder and louder. Qin Chuan's aura also became stronger and stronger. When they saw this scene, an extremely shocked expression appeared on everyone's faces. None of them had expected that Qin Chuan was still alive. He was actually reviving. In the private room, Zhong Qiyu's heart finally calmed down when she saw this. She raised her hand and wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes without leaving a trace. She said softly to Zhong Cheng, "Housekeeper, look after these people. If anyone dares to attack Qin Chuan at this time, I will annihilate their entire family." Zhong Cheng said softly, "I will look after each of them and stop them in time." With Zhong Cheng's words as a guarantee, Zhong Qiyu's mood wasn't as nervous as before. It was just that she couldn't understand what was going on with Qin Chuan. On the other side, Lion Duke was not surprised when he saw Qin Chuan coming back from the dead. It was as if it was a matter of course. As expected of the Phoenix blood, this stinking brat was injured to such an extent, but he was still saved. Lion Duke chuckled. If that old man Yao Feng knew that Qin Chuan had eaten a lot of his precious daughter's Phoenix blood, he would be hopping mad. At the moment when Qin Chuan fell down, Ningya couldn't help but want to save him, but she was stopped by Yao Rao. "Teacher Ning, Qin Chuan is all right, believe me." Yao Rao stopped Ningya, then promptly said to Ningya, "He has Phoenix blood to save his life, so he will be fine." Ningya turned around and looked at Yao Rao in surprise, then asked, "Phoenix blood? What is that?" "Is the real Phoenix blood that I gave Qin Chuan. As long as he still has a breath, he can be reborn. Not only he won't die, but he will also be reborn, and his strength will rise to a new level." Yao Rao faintly smiled. "I gave him Phoenix blood 3 times, so he should have 3 lives." Hearing Yao Rao's explanation, Ningya's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of shock. Yao Rao had actually given Qin Chuan real Phoenix blood, moreover 3 times. "You are really too good to him." At this time, Ningya also didn't know what to say to Yao Rao. Yao Rao was really too good to Qin Chuan. "It's okay." Yao Rao was somewhat embarrassed by Ningya's gaze. "It's not that good." Seeing this scene, Ma Jiawen, who was sitting at one side, helplessly shook her head. She and Yaorao had known each other for 20 years, but Yaorao had never once given her phoenix blood. But Qin Xuan, in such a short period of time, had eaten phoenix blood 3 times in succession. If this wasn't good to him, then what was good to him? She had to say, Ma Jiaowen really envied Qin Xuan. Not only did he have Ningya, this kind of elegant and intellectual teacher, he also had Lion Duke, this demon king's protection, and now he also had Yaorao's sincerity. He was simply a standard winner in life. When everyone was endlessly exclaiming about the changes in Qin Xuan's body, a figure suddenly jumped high from the platform and, holding a long blade, directly chopped towards Qin Xuan's head. Qin Xuan, I, Yi Han, will replace you and become invincible in Foundation establishment. Go to hell. Chapter 536. Yi Han's sudden attack was out of everyone's expectations. Amidst the exclamations, the long saber in Yi Han's hand was already close to Qin Xuan's head. Saber chi poured out and fiercely chopped down. Clang! A crisp sound of metal clashing rang out in the deep pit. A long sword blocked the fatal attack at the critical moment. The person who blocked the attack was none other than Qin Xuan. Yi Han looked at Qin Xuan, who had suddenly stood up, with an extremely shocked expression. He exclaimed, "You can still move?" Originally, Yi Han wanted to take advantage of Qin Xuan's lack of resistance to launch a sneak attack on Qin Xuan. However, he didn't expect that Qin Xuan had already regained consciousness. Qin Xuan grinned and replied, "I originally wanted to experience the feeling of being refreshed. However, you've already jumped on my face. If I don't make a move, I'm afraid I'll lose my life." At this moment, Qin Xuan could also tell that the person who had slashed his back and seriously injured him was this Yi Han in front of him. At that time, the attack had come too suddenly. He didn't even have time to react before he was seriously injured. When he sensed the spiritual fluctuations that filled the sky converging towards him, he thought that he was going to die. There was a moment of despair and regret in his heart. Then he lost consciousness in the intense pain. When he regained consciousness again, he was extremely surprised to find that not only was he still alive, his body had undergone earth-shattering changes. He had actually stepped into the Foundation establishment realm. Just as Qin Xuan's mind was filled with question marks, and he was thinking about what was going on, Yi Han suddenly jumped out and interrupted Qin Xuan's thoughts. Understanding Qin Xuan's words, Yi Han's gaze subconsciously fell on Qin Xuan's body. He was shocked to find that the injuries on Qin Xuan's body had completely recovered. Furthermore, the aura on his body was much stronger than before. "You actually broke through? How is this possible?" Yi Han widened his eyes and exclaimed in disbelief. When everyone heard Qin Xuan's exclamation, they subconsciously tried to sense his cultivation level. As expected, Qin Xuan's aura was full and full. He was already at the Foundation establishment realm. When everyone saw that Qin Xuan had already broken through to the perfected Foundation establishment stage, their faces revealed extremely astonished expressions. It was already very good for others to not die from such an injury, but Qin Xuan was actually a blessing in disguise and directly broke through to the perfected Foundation establishment stage. There was no justice in this. I have indeed broken through. Qin Xuan smiled. So let's continue. As he spoke, Qin Xuan reached out and pulled out a long sword from his back. He was going to continue his previous battle mode, challenging everyone with 2 swords. 1. At the instant Qin Xuan drew his sword, a wisp of blue sword chi shot out violently, and it directly pierced through Yi Han's abdomen and blasted Yi Han flying. In the next moment, Qin Xuan's figure suddenly appeared above Yi Han. The tip of his sword was pointed at Yi Han's heart, and a murderous intent gushed out from the tip of the sword. When Yi Han saw Qin Xuan's actions, his pale face suddenly revealed a look of horror. He shouted, "Don't kill me!" However, before his voice fell, the blade in Qin Xuan's hand had already pierced through his chest. The sharp sword aura suddenly exploded, ending Yi Han's life. When Yi Han's body fell to the ground, The audience burst into extremely enthusiastic cheers. However, there was a dead silence in the arena. Everyone looked at Yi Han, who had fallen to the ground, and Qin Chuan, who was standing to the side, with extremely complicated gazes. Yi Han was the first person to die in Qin Chuan's hands in the arena. Everyone was also very clear that the reason why Qin Chuan killed Yi Han was because Yi Han wanted to kill Qin Chuan. After confirming that Yi Han was dead, Qin Chuan slowly turned around and looked at the remaining opponents. He said calmly, "Come on, let's continue the battle. Those who want to kill me, go ahead and kill them." When they heard Qin Chuan's words, the expressions on everyone's faces could not help but become a little subtle. The meaning in Qin Chuan's words was very obvious. Those who wanted to stop at a certain point with him, he would naturally stop at a certain point. And those who wanted to kill him, he would also fight back with a killing blow. The battle had progressed to this point, and there was actually no suspense. With Qin Chuan's current state and momentum, the remaining 20 or so people were definitely not his match. However, everyone was unwilling to admit defeat and retreat just like that. "Let me have a taste of your brilliant moves." A burly man shouted angrily and stepped forward. His fists were like cannonballs as they flew towards Qin Chuan. He was also at the Foundation Establishment Completion realm, and he did not believe that he was inferior to Qin Chuan by that much. When Qin Chuan saw the burly man rushing over, he laughed loudly and raised his sword to meet him. When the blade of the sword collided with the man's fist, an extremely crisp sound burst out. The hardness of the burly man's fist was far beyond Qin Chuan's imagination. Qin Chuan was taken aback. When he looked carefully, he realized that the burly man was not barehanded. He was wearing a pair of extremely thin boxing gloves on his hands. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see them at all. "This is a pair of boxing gloves that I hired a famous craftsman to cast with half of my life savings. It's called Gale." The burly man shouted angrily, and the spiritual power in his body surged. A light green whirlwind suddenly burst out from his iron fist and whistled towards Qin Chuan. When Qin Chuan saw this, he raised his sword, and the violent sword chi was drawn into the whirlwind. It suddenly exploded, and the whirlwind was cut into pieces. At the same time, Qin Chuan's figure suddenly flashed, and he quickly approached the burly man. The blade in his hand slashed towards the burly man's chest and legs. The burly man reacted quickly and immediately separated his hands, one above and one below, wanting to block Qin Chuan's slash. At this moment, Qin Chuan made an extremely shocking move. The long sword in Qin Chuan's left hand suddenly split into two. Qin Chuan opened his mouth and used his teeth to bite the third sword, stabbing it straight towards the burly man's abdomen. The burly man did not expect Qin Chuan to have such a move. He immediately mobilized all the spiritual power in his body, wanting to protect himself with a spiritual shield. However, it was already too late. Poochie! The blade pierced through the burly man's abdomen and blood splattered everywhere. At the same time, Qin Chuan jumped back and reached out to catch the blade in his mouth. "Who else wants to fight with me? I welcome you." Qin Chuan had already shown mercy in the previous blow. Otherwise, the burly man would have been a corpse by now. When everyone saw the battle between Qin Chuan and the burly man, they felt their blood boiling at this moment. Before Qin Chuan's voice fell, several figures jumped out and wanted to fight with Qin Chuan. When Qin Chuan saw this, he immediately raised his sword and met them. The battle broke out again. This time, Qin Chuan won faster than before. Under the full power of the dual sword style, no one was a match for him. All of them were defeated by his sword. When Qin Chuan defeated 2 more opponents, there were less than 10 opponents left standing in front of him. Chapter 537. Seeing the incomparably hot-blooded battle on the arena, Yaorao felt as if the blood within her body was also burning. Her eyes were sparkling as she looked at Qin Chuan, who was bathed in blood on the arena, then excitedly said to Ningya beside her, "Teacher Ning, did you see that? He's going to win soon." Ningya nodded her head and exclaimed in admiration, His growth is really too fast. Now, compared to before, his swordsmanship is already a lot smoother and more natural. Moreover, he is actually walking on the path of dual sword style. Not only dual sword style, just a moment ago he defeated that brawny man who was wearing boxing gloves using triple sword style. Yarao somewhat expectantly said to Ningya, if he is really able to master triple sword style, then his swordsmanship will definitely become even stronger. Hearing Yarao, Ningya, however, lightly shook her head. She didn't think that Qin Chuan could easily master triple sword style. Using 3 swords to fight doesn't represent triple sword style. Triple sword style not only requires to simultaneously use 3 swords, but also simultaneously achieve triple heart and release sword intent at will. Of course, the current Qin Chuan still hadn't comprehended sword intent, so it was also possible for him to release sword chi at will. But from Qin Chuan's current performance, triple sword style was still too forceful, but he was using double sword style extremely smoothly. I believe Qin Chuan will definitely be able to do it. Yarao was extremely confident in Qin Chuan. With his ability, if he wants to do it, then it will definitely not be a problem. Seeing the performance of Yarao, Ma Jiawen, who was sitting at the side, couldn't continue watching, so she whispered to Yarao, Princess, reserve a bit. Hearing Ma Jiawen, Yarao's complexion slightly turned red. Then, lightly coughing, she asked Ma Jiawen in a low voice, was my performance a moment ago very exaggerated? Ma Jiawen looked at Yarao with a very strange gaze. Yarao's performance a moment ago was not only exaggerated, it was simply too exaggerated. Could it be that you don't even know what kind of appearance you had a moment ago? In human terms, you are simply Qin Chuan's little fangirl. Of course, it was absolutely impossible for Ma Jiawen to say this kind of words. She could only tactfully remind Yarao, your performance just now was a bit exaggerated, not too ladylike. Qin Chuan's teacher is a very elegant and very gentle lady, so she definitely likes more gentle and quiet girls. Hearing Ma Jiawen, Yarao lightly nodded her head, then turned towards Ma Jiawen with a smile and asked, Teacher Ning, are you thirsty? Let me make you a pot of tea. Finished speaking, without waiting for Ningya's response, Yarao directly took out a set of tea set from her storage ring and placed it on the table in front of her, then began to brew tea. Her movements were elegant and skilled. Clearly she was well versed in the way of tea. I didn't expect Yarao to be proficient in tea ceremony. Ningya faintly smiled, then picked up the teapot that Yarao had placed at the side, opened it, and took a look, then praised, the taste of this tea is very peculiar. It should be spirit tea, right? This is indeed spirit tea. Its name is heavenly bewitching fragrance. My father, Emperor, specially found people to plant and cultivate this tea, and only one tea tree can bloom every 10 years. Yarao, while brewing tea, said to Ningya, if you like, then I can give you a pot. Then I won't be polite with you. Ningya took out a talisman pen from her storage ring, then said to Yarao, I also don't have any suitable gift to give you. This talisman pen is the talisman pen that I have always used when I was young to practice talisman array. Treat it as a little bit of my regard for you. I like this gift very much. Thank you. Yarao very happily took the talisman pen handed over by Ningya. Although the value of this talisman pen was far less than 1% of a pot of heavenly bewitching fragrance, but the significance it represented was nevertheless extraordinary. Yarao really liked this talisman pen very much. While Ningya and Yarao were chatting and laughing, the duel on the arena was finally coming to an end. At this moment, there were only 3 people left standing in front of Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan's lungs were heaving up and down, and he was violently gasping for breath. After fighting continuously until now, his physical strength and energy were greatly consumed, and the spiritual power in his dantian had already reached the bottom, so it could be said that he was exhausted. At this moment, facing only 3 opponents, he felt that he was about to be unable to hold on. Qin Chuan felt tired, but how could the other 3 people standing in front of him also not be tired? The 3 of them had joined hands to attack Qin Chuan, But not only they didn't cause too much disturbance to Qin Chuan, instead they were badly battered by that mysterious third sword attack of Qin Chuan and were riddled with scars. At this moment, they had already reached the point of exhaustion. If they continued to fight, then they would not be competing with Qin Chuan in terms of fighting strength, rather in terms of willpower. Whoever could endure and persist until the end would be the winner. Plop! The tall and thin man who was sweating profusely and had deathly pale complexion sat down on the arena. His breath was like gossamer, and incomparably weak said to the person beside him, "I persist. I can't persist." Before he could finish speaking, the tall and thin man's vision turned black, and he fainted. And when the other two people saw the tall and thin man fainted, their face couldn't help but reveal a touch of bitterness. The three of them joining hands were still unable to defeat Qin Chuan. Not to mention now, there were only two of them. Plop, plop. Along with the muffled sound of two people, both of them were also lying on the ground in an incomparably sorry state. They were gasping for breath and simply didn't want to move even a finger. Seeing this scene, the audience suddenly burst into earth-shaking cheers. The winner of this battle was Qin Chuan, who was still standing on the arena. If one didn't personally experience it, absolutely no one would know how tired Qin Chuan was. He didn't remember how he returned to the hotel. He only knew that when he woke up, it was already 2 days later. When he woke up, the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was Ningya. At this time, Ningya was sitting on the bed, eating fruit salad. When she saw Qin Chuan wake up, she stabbed a piece of fruit with a fork and handed it to Qin Chuan's mouth. She smiled and said, "This fruit is very sweet. You should like it." At this time, Qin Chuan didn't care about the difference between a man and a woman. He opened his mouth and ate the fruit. He didn't even chew it before swallowing it into his stomach. It wasn't too late. He suddenly sat up, reached out, and grabbed the fruit plate in Ningya's hand. He grabbed the fruit and stuffed it into his mouth. He was really starving. Seeing Qin Chuan wolfing down the food, Ningya chuckled, "Eat slowly, don't choke. I knew that you'd be very hungry when you wake up. This plate of spirit fruit will definitely fill your stomach." Qin Chuan didn't speak, but just ate the fruit salad in big mouthfuls. In just a moment, the fruit plate was empty. Phew! Qin Chuan let out a long sigh of relief, threw the fruit plate on the table beside him, and then lay back down. He burped contentedly. After filling his stomach, he felt alive again. Chapter 538. Ningya looked at Qin Chuan's comfortable face, then asked with a smile, "How do you feel?" "Comfortable. My whole body feels comfortable," Qin Chuan said with a satisfied face. "Teacher, what kind of spirit fruit is this?" "This is given to me by Yao. She specially told me to make a fruit salad with spirit spring water for you to eat, so that it will help your body to absorb it." Ningya looked at Qin Chuan with a smile and said, "You brat, for such a girl to care about you. It's really your blessing." Seeing Qin Chuan didn't speak, Ningya said, "Do you know why you were able to come back from the dead at that time?" Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan's eyes couldn't help but flash with a touch of subtle color, then asked, "Is it related to Yao?" Ningya nodded and said in a rather complicated tone, "She said that you had taken a pill called Phoenix Blood. That pill was made from Phoenix's heart's blood, and when you were on the verge of death, it had the effect of nirvana rebirth." Hearing this, Qin Chuan's complexion couldn't help but become somewhat subtle. He was silent for a moment, then said in a low voice, "She is really good to me. So what are you going to do?" Ningya curiously looked at Qin Chuan. "For saving my life, it's not too much to repay with my body, right?" Qin Chuan was silent again. This time the silence was longer than before. After a good while, he looked at Ningya, then said in a low voice, "Teacher, I don't have the qualifications to talk about these things. I want revenge." Ningya sighed, then advised, "But your life can't only be filled with hatred. I know Yao is very good to me. I also like Yao, but liking is one thing, being together is another thing. I don't want to die one day, and she still has to take revenge for me." Qin Chuan said in a very low voice, "Living in the world of hatred, I alone am enough. Do you really think this is good? Have you ever thought about that Limani who died in your hands? Ningya faintly said to Qin Chuan. What's the difference between you and her now? Limani also lived in the world of hatred, always thinking about revenge. When she met Qin Chuan again, even if she knew that she had no chance of victory against Qin Chuan, she still rushed over like a moth to the flame, and the result was her soul extinguished, forever disappeared from this world. If Limani could let go of the hatred in her heart, then as the ninth miss of Een Mountain, she would have a very good life. Step. Calm. He and Yaorao. Seeing Qin Chuan silent again, Ningya gently shook her head. You think about it clearly. I will only say so much. Have a good rest. After saying these words, Ningya got up and walked out of the room. Qin Chuan looked at the departing back of Ningya, opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just when Qin Chuan's victory against 50 people was in an uproar in the mountain city, the news of Qin Chuan's withdrawal suddenly spread in the arena. It could be said that a stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Qin Chuan had broken through 4 stages in a row in the 1 against 1,000 challenge. His strength was obvious to all, and he definitely deserved the title of Invincible Foundation Establishment. Some people couldn't understand Qin Chuan's withdrawal, but more people could understand Qin Chuan's choice. In the 1 against 50 challenge, although Qin Chuan won the final victory, his performance was very extreme, which was obvious to everyone. Since it was so difficult for Qin Chuan to win against 50 people, then Qin Chuan had no chance of winning against 100 people. Therefore, it was reasonable for Qin Chuan to withdraw. She also chose to withdraw after breaking through the 4th stage. It could be seen that the limit of the Invincible Foundation Establishment should be about 1 against 50 people. And those who couldn't understand also had their reasons, because Qin Chuan didn't use the talisman array that he was best at, nor did he transform into a dragon. Instead, he fought with swordsmanship that he wasn't proficient in. Many people thought that Qin Chuan was using this battle to practice his swordsmanship. In fact, this was indeed the case. If Qin Chuan went all out, he would definitely win the 1 against 50 challenge easily. Even if it was a bit difficult for him to win the 1 against 50 challenge, it might not be impossible. In their opinion, no matter what, Qin Chuan should give it a try. If he felt that he couldn't win, he could just admit defeat on the spot. He would only lose the rewards of the first 3 rounds. However, no matter what others said, Qin Chuan's withdrawal had become an established fact. There was no way to change it. In the hotel room, Qin Chuan looked at Ningya, who was sitting in front of him, and asked, Teacher, are you going back soon? Ningya nodded and said, You have the protection of the Lion King by your side, so I don't need to continue to stay by your side. Moreover, I don't want to go to the demon realm. After you leave, I plan to go back to school. Teacher needs my help to make the armor for you. Qin Chuan heard this and said to Ningya with some regret, It's a pity. I wanted to enjoy the scenery of the demon realm with you, teacher. You might as well accompany Yaorao. Ningya stood up and said to Qin Chuan, I'm leaving. You don't have to send me off. Before her voice fell, Ningya's figure had already disappeared in front of Qin Chuan. Zhong Mansion. Ningya stood in front of the simple stone door, and her face couldn't help but flash with a touch of nostalgia. Creak. The stone door slowly opened, and Zhong Cheng's figure appeared in front of the door. He said to Ningya, Please come in. Ningya looked at Zhong Cheng with a subtle look and asked, You are Uncle Zhong, right? I haven't seen you for so many years, but you are still the same. Miss Ning, I haven't seen you for many years, but you are still as elegant as before. Zhong Cheng smiled slightly and said, Please. Ningya stepped through the door, and under Zhong Cheng's lead, she walked through a long corridor and came to a living room with a very modern feel. At this time, Zhong Qiyu was standing in front of the sofa, waiting for her arrival. I thought you wouldn't come, but I didn't expect you to come. Zhong Qiyu looked at Ningya and asked, The last time we met should be 15 years ago, right? Yes, 15 years ago. Ningya nodded. 15 years have passed, but I didn't expect you to still be single. Don't tell me you don't plan to marry in this life. Aren't you also single and unmarried? Zhong Qiyu took a deep look at Ningya, When I learned that you accepted Qin Chuan as your student, I knew that you haven't let go of that feeling in your heart. Speaking up to this point, Zhong Chuyu sighed again. How could I not be unable to let go? Chapter 539. It's because I know you can't let it go, so I came to see you. Ningya looked at Zhong Chuyu and said softly, Qin Chuan told me that someone was secretly protecting him, but he didn't know who that person was. At that time, I guessed it was you, so why didn't you see him? Zhong Chuyu pursed her lips and asked, Then what identity do you think I should use to see him? Family or friends? Ningyu was silent. She knew in her heart that Zhong Chuyu still couldn't let go of the matter of that year. Seeing Ningyu didn't speak, Zhong Chuyu's face couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile and whispered, If he didn't know Qin Qing, he wouldn't have gone to Star Dragon Federation, he wouldn't have died there, and our child would be as old as Qin Chuan by now. Emotional matters are too complicated. There's no way to say who's right and who's wrong. Ningya sighed. In fact, you should let it go. You haven't let it go, so what qualifications do you have to persuade me to let it go? Zhong Chuyu looked at Ningya. Qin Chuan should be my child, but now I don't even have the identity to see him. You will never understand the pain in my heart. Ningya was speechless. After all, she thought too simply about some things. I'm going to leave Border Mountain and go back to school soon. Qin Chuan will go to the Demon Realm with Lion Duke and Yaorao. If he encounters any trouble in the Demon Realm, it will be very difficult for me to get involved, so I want to ask you to take care of him. Finally, Ningya decided not to say anything more, and just spoke the purpose of her trip. Although Qin Chuan was protected by Lion Duke, but Lion Duke was after all a member of the demon race. If Lion Duke wanted to harm Qin Chuan, only Zhong Chuyu had the ability to protect Qin Chuan. Hearing Ningya's words, Zhong Chuyu slightly frowned and asked, Qin Chuan withdrew from the competition not because he has completed the experiential learning, but because he wants to go to the Demon Realm? Why does he want to go to the Demon Realm? I just mentioned a person. Her name is Yaorao. Don't tell me you don't know who Yaorao is? Ningya looked at Zhong Chuyu with a subtle gaze and said, Yaorao invited Qin Chuan to Mount Tianyao as a guest, and Qin Chuan agreed. Zhong Chuyu was stunned, and so was Zhong Cheng. The demon princess was inviting Qin Chuan to Mount Tianyao as a guest, and Qin Chuan agreed. One dared to invite while the other dared to accept. Are you crazy? Why didn't you stop him? Zhong Chuyu walked quickly to Ningya and questioned, Don't you know how dangerous it is for him to go to Mount Tianyao? Mount Tianyao was the center of the entire demon realm, and it was also where the demon emperor resided. Qin Chuan, a human, going to Mount Tianyao as a guest was no different from sending a lamb to the tiger's den. Facing Zhong Chuyu's anger, Ningya smiled bitterly and said, If I could stop it, I wouldn't say these words to you. Moreover, Qin Chuan and Yaorao are somewhat fond of each other. This time, Zhong Chuyu was completely stunned. She was completely dumbfounded. Qin Chuan had fallen in love with the princess of the demon race. The princess of the demon realm also likes Qin Chuan. Zhong Chuyu's breathing became somewhat hurried. She coldly stared at Ningya and said in a heavy voice, Are you sure you're not joking with me? Do you know what this means? That's the princess of the demon realm. How can the two of them be together? There's nothing impossible in this world. Ningya looked at Zhong Chuyu, just like he was your fiancé, but in the end, he married another woman and had children. Bastard. Zhong Chuyu grabbed Ningya's collar and coldly said, Do you think I don't dare to touch you? I'm just stating a fact. When he went to Star Dragon Federation to gain experience, did you ever think that he would never come back? Ningya softly sighed. There are many beautiful girls around Qin Chuan. Whether it is their family background or cultivation talent, they are all excellent. But Qin Chuan doesn't like any of them, so what can I do? How many outstanding girls were around Qin Chuan? Lu Zi, Zhou Lin, Bai Yu, and even Yi Qingning and Long Xiao. Which one of these girls wasn't one in a million? Which one of them didn't have boundless prospects? But Qin Chuan only had friendship with them and didn't have any other feelings. So what could she do? She couldn't imitate the ancient times and give Qin Xuan an arranged marriage. Zhang Qiyu had investigated Qin Xuan's information. She was also very clear that there were many outstanding girls around Qin Xuan. She also once thought that Qin Xuan's future wife might be one of them. But she never thought that Qin Xuan would actually fall in love with a monster racist princess. No, we must stop it, Zhang Qiyu resolutely said. He absolutely can't be together with a monster racist princess. What's the reason? Ningya looked at Zhang Qiyu. They can't be close relatives. What do you mean by this attitude? Zhang Qiyu's tone was anxious. Do you know that if Qin Xuan is together with that monster racist princess, it will greatly affect his public opinion? Whether it is the human race or the monster race, they won't accept him. Isn't there still Jia Mountain? Ningya calmly said. On the contrary, I think it's very good. If he can put down the hatred in his heart for Yaorao and settle down in Jia Mountain, that's definitely a good thing. Hatred in his heart. Zhang Qiyu frowned. What does that mean? Ningya gently raised her eyebrows and pretended not to understand. Did I say that just now? You must have misheard. I have a panoramic camera here. Do you want us to go to the monitoring room to take a look? Zhang Qiyu gnashed her teeth and said, What else are you hiding from me? Ningya sighed and said with a wry smile, I was careless and actually let it slip. What kind of hatred can Qin Xuan have in his heart? Don't tell me you can't guess. Hearing this, Zhang Qiyu couldn't help but tremble and asked with a trembling voice, Is it the Qin family or someone else? It's not convenient for me to tell you that person's name. Ningya stretched out her hand and pulled Zhang Qiyu's hand away from her collar. Don't interfere in this matter. It won't do you any good, and Qin Xuan won't want you to. Ningya's words were rudely interrupted by Zhang Qiyu before she finished speaking. She stared at Ningya and asked with a sharp voice, Who? Who killed him? Madam, calm down. Zhong Cheng stepped forward and pulled Zhang Qiyu away, then said to Ningya, Miss Ning, we'll definitely do what you asked us to do. You should also leave. Ningya nodded at Zhong Cheng, then turned around and prepared to leave. Just at this moment, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly descended. Ningya suddenly turned around and looked at Zhang Qiyu, whose aura was in chaos, with an extremely shocked expression. She then looked at Zhong Cheng, whose expression was extremely solemn, and asked anxiously, She is heavenly tribulation. Zhong Cheng looked at Zhang Qiyu, whose complexion was slightly pale, and said in a deep voice, Madam's Yuanying heavenly tribulation is coming. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.